Welcome to episode 28 of the Coast AFL Podcast from Nick and Players. This week, it's the off season. Oh, it's not the off season. It's the break in between the home and away season and the finals. So this is pretty much the awards season, as we're currently dubbing it, because this is when most of the awards related to the home and away season are announced. Obviously, Brownlow and Goal of the Year, Mark of the Year, that's all done towards the end of the finals. But this is where the big chunk of awards are. So it's Coaches Awards, Players Association, All Australian, that sort of stuff. We also got information about Grand Final medal presenters, which we will start on pretty much straight away. So first of all, how are you doing, Mr. Syric?
Not too bad, not too bad. Even though there was a bit of a break in the men's competition, I still watched a bit of AFLW, a bit of State League Waffle. And yeah, pretty happy with that. So it's one of those things where it's like, you can take a little chill break, especially doing the research side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely watching the other two more for my enjoyment. But keen to get back into what should be thrilling final season.
Absolutely. We're both definitely looking forward to what's to come in the next couple of weeks, especially with your team, top four.
Yes.
My team,
yeah,
18th.
No, not quite. Just fell short. But
Just fell short. Just,
as I said,
9, 10, 11 wins out of the finals.
Yeah. Well, I said a lot can happen in a season, so who knows what will be in store next year. But for us thinking about this year still, we will go through the games later on. But first
we are going to start with the grand final medal presenters, because they were announced today as of recording. So I figure, freshest information, may as well start first. Okay, so we've got information on the Cup Ambassador, the Norm Smith medal presenter, the Jock McHale medal presenter, and the brand new Ron Barassi medal presenter, officially confirmed yesterday, I believe. Or today, as of recording.
Yeah.
And it's already been confirmed as to who is going to present that said medal as well. So the Cup Ambassador is Josh Kennedy from the West Coast Eagles. I got to specify that because there are two Josh Kennedys that everyone knows about.
Mm-hmm.
Stevie J is the Norm Smith medal presenter, premiership player for Geelong, went over to GWS.
Final specialist too. He had some very good finals in that era.
Absolutely. 4-time premiership coach David Parkin will be the Jock McHale medal presenter. And then Fred Buller, who was the 1963 premiership captain, I believe it's for Geelong, off the top of my head, will present the Ron Barassi medal. So, already got... It's good to see that that's already been confirmed for the next couple of weeks.
And just a rundown for those not familiar, Norm Smith is the player in the grand final that's best on ground.
Mm-hmm.
The Jock McHale medal, I'm pretty sure, is the medal that goes to the winning coach, isn't it?
Correct.
Yes. And the newly introduced Ron Barassi medal, if you heard before, this was sort of in the works just to honour him after his passing this year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that will actually go to the winning captain of the side. They'll get a special medal, which is nice because it's often acknowledged, but there hasn't been a specific award for it. So,
well, as you've seen throughout this season alone, leadership has made all the difference in some teams. So it's nice for the captains to be honoured for it.
Yeah, for sure. And, as I said, I wouldn't actually mind if they went through retrospectively. I don't think they'll give anyone an actual medal, but, as I said, retrospectively acknowledging those past captains because, as I said, it is definitely one of the hardest things to do. Captaining your team is a huge responsibility, especially in the modern day with all the extra media stuff. And, as I said, to get that, big reward. I know it's mainly a team effort, but, as I said, being captain's just that extra responsibility and should be recognised.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, speaking of recognition, we are going to move on to the retirees, starting with the most recently announced, which was also today as of recording this, and that is Chad Wingard.
Yeah, one close to my heart, fairly obviously. He was a very high round draft pick back when Port were pretty terrible. Round 1, pick 6. He pretty much started off with a bang. Played the entire of his not the entire of his debut season, most of it, and pretty much was electric in their turnaround. Yeah, he was very electric, and he just partnered very well with Robbie Gray in that forward line. A couple of very good smalls to crumb some of the taller players who were rotating down there, pre-Schultz. We're talking about, John Butcher, and Justin Westhoff.
Oh yeah, I remember Westhoff.
So
I liked watching Westhoff.
yeah. John Butcher was, definitely a fringe player. He was very great in the sample, not so good. So we weren't having that strong a forward line. So yeah, those two players for us growing in the forward line definitely helped advance forward line structure. He was absolutely fantastic. He used to have the nickname Wingardian Angel because of some of his clutch moments in last quarters, and especially in that comeback era of 2013, where Port used to come back from pretty big margins. And yeah, as I said, pretty much was one of the better key forwards, averaging, somewhere between 50 and 20 disposals and kicking somewhere between basically 2 goals a season, and then sort of fell out of favour in the Port side. But I think he definitely wanted a bit more midfield time, but was getting pushed out by others, and Port's forward line was pretty mediocre at that time. So he sought
better
green
opportunities
pastures
elsewhere.
Yeah, better opportunities at Hawthorn. That really didn't work out for him. Just the way that rebuild happened. He had a tiny bit of midfield time, but between a mix of injuries and just positional needs, he mainly just stuck around the forward line.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't bad for Hawthorn, but it definitely wasn't near his excitement in the early Power 2000s days. But he was, as far as I can tell, actually fairly highly rated for some of his leadership, which was a bit surprising because he was a bit of I don't want to say too like he wasn't a hothead like Rosier Butters, but you know what I mean. He was definitely seen as a bit cocky.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that was just a bit of on-field stuff and off the field, he actually could provide a lot. I'm not exactly sure, but yeah, I'm sure Hawthorn would appreciate that, especially with some of the forwards that they've developed a few of the years. Maybe, I mean, obviously Ginnivan wouldn't have had too much time to learn much, but people like Dylan Moore, what's the other one? Nick Watson, but yeah, Nick Watson again's fairly new, but yeah, as I said, maybe sticks on with a leadership role, but yeah, no, absolutely a fantastic I would say probably 5 or 6 years from his debut onwards.
Yeah.
Quite an out for them, but there's no understating how exciting he was, especially in an era where Port went from rabble to, pretty high up there. And yeah, Wingard was one of those players that just sort of represented the new wave of young kids. Port was seen as being a bit, I guess ever since the 2007 grand final, a bit passionless, a bit defeated, and the excitement that Chad Wingard brought to the club was like a breath of air. Breath of fresh air. Yeah.
No, I completely agree.
He
was one of the players that, yeah, you're right, definitely had a bit of cockiness about him, but he was always fun to watch, especially when he came up clutch. Again, yeah, it's unfortunate that injuries hampered his play at Hawthorn. He managed to only get an extra 70 odd games at Hawthorn after moving from Port, which is unlucky.
Yeah, I should say,
but
he did finish on 218 games, which is very impressive.
He did,
of course,
with 300 goals overall, which is very, very good as well. Yeah, he only kicked. He kicked 68 goals at Hawthorn compared to 232 at Port Adelaide.
Yeah,
almost one more for the funny number.
Yeah, he only kicked 9 goals in his debut year, which is a bit surprising to me. I remember it being quite good, but yeah, as I said, it was he was still very quick. So he went from 9 goals to 43, which is probably one of the bigger jumps you
That
could
is a
probably
big
make
jump, yeah.
as a small forward. Um, so yeah, as I said, so his importance was very much um, felt quickly on arrival, and yeah, as I said, a player I was of fond thoughts for.
Yeah, absolutely. So his honors over his season were he got third place in the for the Peter Crimmins Medal in 2020. He made All Australian in 2013 and 2015. Mark of the Year in 2014. Port Adelaide's John
Um,
Cahill Medal at 2013. Port Adelaide's leading goal kicker in 2015 and 2016. That was probably primarily before the rise of Charlie Dixon, I would assume.
yeah, it was in between Schultz and Dixon. Schultz was getting injured and just about to retire, and Dixon, I think, was brought in 16.
That sounds about right. And then the NAB, he was also one of the NAB Rising Star nominees in his debut season of 2012.
Mhm.
So he had a certainly had an interesting career. Then lucky that he definitely, if it wasn't for injury, he definitely could have gone probably another year or two. But time makes fools
Yeah,
of
I
us
mean,
all
it just feels the
sometimes.
right time. Yeah, with
But he
Hawthorn.
hadn't played a
Like I
game at
said,
all this season due to injury, so it kind of ended up making sense.
yeah, exactly. As I said, I think he was actually selectable at parts of this year. As I said, he just fell out of the rotation. I think it would have been like a fairly agreed upon thing.
Yeah,
Um, that
I don't think he was
'cause
forced out. I think it's a decision that he was able to make on his own.
yeah, exactly. So, as I said, is like, maybe the fact that he didn't retire a bit earlier suggests that he might actually have some coaching in his repertoire, which that's why I did bring it up, but I'm not too sure about that. It would just be yeah, as I said, uh, you know, um it'll he definitely had a lot of smarts to him, he wasn't just someone who relied on natural talents. He had a lot of like you call it instinct, but it's like smarts instincts of like making those best decisions. You know what I mean? It's like those little tap ons that, it just seems fluky, but you know exactly what he meant by those sort of things. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
forward craft to a T.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. Next on our retiree list is our next couple of players are not as haven't had as bigger careers as Chad Wingard, so we won't talk about them as much. Although I might have a bit to say about at least one of the ones upcoming. But we're going to jump over to Hugh Greenwood next.
Yes, very interesting sort of career. He was drafted round 3, pick 48 of the 2015 rookie draft at the age of, I think, 24 or 25. So he was a mature age recruit, and he just had an impact. Um, like Scott Pendlebury, he is of basketball
Basketball
background.
background, yep.
Yes, he used to play for the Perth Wildcats. I think I actually saw a game he was in. Um, I can't quite remember if he made the court, but he was on the list. Um, but yeah, as I said, I couldn't really tell you too much about him. I think he played as a forward. But yeah, as I said, he was just one of the new breed of big body midfielders that were coming around at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think had much careers, but players like Patrick Cripps, not Patrick Crisps. Um, and yeah, even Bontempelli. But yeah, as I said, big body forwards were the main thing. And one of the things that stood out was despite being a big with that basketball background, he had a lot of burst speed and just enough tank to keep going in that midfield.
Mm-hmm.
He did fall a bit out of favor at the end of 2019. It was a very in between season for the Crows. So they shipped him off because they didn't want to pay him. If you remember that, so the Suns picked him up.
Yep.
For a fairly decent contract for 2 years, and he played a reasonable amount. And then came one of the more interesting to happen. The Suns delisted him in the hopes
They were
in the
going to
normally
re-sign him in the rookie draft
straight,
again.
yeah, exactly. It's normally pretty straightforward. But the Kangaroos, who had the number 1 draft pick at the time for the rookie draft, because they came last, they were like, you know what? We're going to have him. And he went to North Melbourne. Had an okay debut year and dropped off after that, unfortunately. Look, as I said, obviously with like such a mature age player, he was mainly picked up in his prime. So you could see, you know, sort of, him tapering off isn't that big of a surprise, but a bit of a disappointment all the same. He achieved 121 games, but he was a very good high pressure player. You could put him up forward, but he was a bit of the grunt that the Crows sort of needed at the time. They had, obviously good uncontested ball winners like Rory Sloane, the Crouch brothers when they had both. But yeah, as I said, once they shifted Laird and Dawson, or it would have been before Dawson, sorry, would have been just Laird and they would have had one of their old veterans. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm blanking
yeah.
on who it might have been, but
Sort of fell out of like is it Cheney or I've forgotten. Oh, Rory Atkins also
it
would
might
have
have been
been there
Atkins.
back in the day. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, anyway, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it was just a bit of a shame. Had he stayed at the Suns, I think he probably would have been edged out as well. But it was just a bit of a shame because, as I said, some of the struggling clubs were keen to have his experience. But on the flip side, both the clubs that picked him up drafted pretty well to replace him. So he pretty much just played a role and ended his career that way. Only played 3 games this season. But yeah, as I said, only really seen when they needed him because, yeah, as I said, Kangaroos, they've got what?
They've got a lot.
Yeah, Sheasel, not Ed
Wardlaw.
Vickers Willis. Now I'm getting confused. What's the other hyphen? The one that actually
Oh,
plays?
Davies Uniacke.
Davies Uniacke, thank you.
LDU, as he's otherwise known as.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's not really much to say apart from that, though.
No,
It's an interesting career.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's definitely been one of those players that's always been a fan favorite, but it's just never really been not necessarily fan favorite per club. Like I think just overall AFL, like people have kind of enjoyed him as a person, but in terms of just a middling career, it's very unfortunate that it's gone the way that it has.
Yeah. And it's funny because, you could argue that maybe sort of his basketball career sort of went the same way as his football career. He was always picked up in sides with very heavy competition. As I said, even the Crows at the start, they were dropping off, but they were never short of pure midfield power.
Well, he joined the Crows pretty much at their peak because
yeah, exactly.
He played his first game in 2017, the year that they played in a grand final.
Exactly. 15 games in that season, 22 the next. So, yeah, as I said, it was just, a bit of a what could have been, but at the same time, to go and play 2 sports at the, well, I won't say highest level because technically NBL, but in Australia, highest level, it's very impressive.
He got some experience with college basketball teams, according to his bio. So he played college basketball with the New Mexico Lobos, and then he trained with the Utah Jazz of the NBA squad before coming back to Australia. So he had some tier 1 experience to some degree.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, as I said, it's we see a lot in women's sport, obviously, because of normally shorter seasons. You get masters of 2 categories, but yeah, as I said, it's always so hard. By the time you're trying to figure out what exactly you want to do, a lot of your prime's gone. So to make the switch late and still make a very impressive, again, 121 games. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but it's really respectable.
Absolutely. And we salute him for the work that he has done towards the AFL.
Yeah, and he made a meme of the Suns, which, as I said, they don't need more crap put their way, but it definitely defines some of a really bad period of list management for them. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right. Next person we're gonna go to is a bit of a journeyman. Low games played due to copious amounts of ACLs and other leg injuries, but everyone seemed to love him anyway, and that is Sam Naismith. Um,
Yes.
Started his career at Sydney alongside Toby Nankervis. They were both
Mm,
playing for the Rock Roll there at the time. Obviously, I think due to injury, Naismith never really got a shot, or never got a proper shot at it. It was always his legs. Too many ACLs, unfortunately. Then eventually he was delisted out of the AFL system entirely, and went to play in the VFL. He played for the Boroughs, um,
mm.
and managed to find some of the best form he was ever able to be in. And then we signed him, 1 year contract, I believe.
Mm.
Because we had just lost Ivan Solo to Port Adelaide, which, funnily enough, he's still
Yes.
not playing the number one rock position. Um, so then, Nankervis needed a bit of help because Samson Ryan still isn't ready yet for to be able to consistently be back up to Nankervis. So we brought Naismith in, and for when he was on the park, he wasn't that bad. Like, granted, it takes a long time to be at the speed of the AFL at this current day and age.
Yeah. And
But
look, I'm
to
gonna
be
say,
thrown into
like,
the
in
deep end,
terms,
I thought he did the best that he could.
yeah, in terms of position, like, there's a few that are pretty big, but like key defenders and ruckman, definitely two of the biggest change from VFL, where you normally get a body, that's fairly a more favorable matchup to just like all the big AFL. Like, you don't get a break. Even, look, as I said, I'm making jokes about like BJ Williams. Oh, not BJ. Um, oh, is it BJ? Forgotten.
Which
Which of the
Eagles
Williams
rock are you
rucks?
talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, anyway, I make
It
jokes
might be
about him all
BJ.
the
I don't know.
time. But yeah, it is a Bailey Williams. I think one's B and one's just BJ. I can't remember. Um, but yeah, so yeah, absolutely tough. But a really nice story, him getting that contract, because I'd totally forgotten about him prior to 2020. And as I said, he was picked up in a very weird time. It wasn't just Nankervis. It was a lot of Sydney ruckmen that they were trying out.
Oh yeah,
Because it was like 2013, it was well, Mike Pike and
I
like
think this was
maybe.
just before they decided to go primarily with Sam Reed for a while as well.
Yeah, exactly. And they were putting Kurt Tippett there even at times.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got like a slew, as I said, well, Mike Pike technically joins that category of just like, you know, very minor playing ruckmans. As I said, you got Nankervis, Mark Seaby, Tom Derricks, who went off to do modeling afterwards. So, as I said, it's definitely, if you can name every ruckman that played for Sydney in like 2010 onwards, you are a AFL trivia genius in my book.
Yeah,
Because,
you would have to be because
yeah,
they had like 15 different ruckmen. It feels like.
yeah, exactly. Shane Mumford,
Oh
even,
yeah, I forget about
that's
Mumford.
almost hard to forget. So yeah, as I said, yeah, not much to say about his career, but definitely an interesting part of AFL history. He'll probably be forgotten after a while, but for this year at least, we would like to acknowledge and salute you, Sam Naismith.
Absolutely. So he played 33 total games with total goals for 3. Originally recruited from New South Wales, obviously, because that's why he was able to join Sydney. Um, and then obviously went to play in the VFL, which is how we found him.
Yeah,
His statistics overall, he's primarily played the bulk of his games in 2016, 2017. And then, yeah, as we can see on the timeline here, there's a lot of zeros because there's a lot of injuries. It's very tragic,
yeah.
but
And
it's
yeah,
about
did I mention
it's what it
round eight,
is.
pick 58 in the 2012 rookie draft?
Let me go back to that. No, we did not talk about that, but that is right here.
Okay.
Yes.
So pretty much bottom of the barrel pick. I don't think there would have been another person after him.
Possibly not, but I mean, sometimes the team throws you a lifeline, and besides his ACL injuries, he made the most of it in those 2 years.
Yeah. And look, I was right about that. But a few above him, GWS Zach Williams. So, yeah, sometimes you can just randomly find players.
And yeah, who's now playing for
Now playing for
Carlton.
Carlton,
Yeah.
might be in the finals. Hopefully he gets better for that.
Yes, he's meant to be coming back. Is he coming back from injury or was he rubbed out? I can't remember.
Yeah, he was.
Oh no, it was
injured
injury. He was the last
delayed out.
injury. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, back to Naismith. We salute you for your journey and we hope you have a long career outside of football. And now, finally, the last retiree to talk about is the one that people have mixed opinions on due to some circumstances outside of AFL, and that is Marlion Pickett.
Yeah.
Everyone knows his journey into the AFL. Mid-season pickup in 2019, out from Perth. Won the VFL Grand Final, and then 6 days later won the AFL Grand Final on his debut. Kicked a goal that pretty much blew the MCG wide open. I was there. It was amazing. Where we demolished GWS. What a brilliant game that was. And then just kind of, played in the 2020 Grand Final, of course, with the shortened season, shortened quarters. So he is a 2-time premiership player, which is, very impressive for someone with such a short career. Didn't even play 100 games, finished at 91. 27 total goals. He got to play, as I talked about last week, I think it was, he got to kick his miracle goal in his last game. Granted, we still lost against the Gold Coast Suns, which is what it is at this point. Celebrated the start of his career with a miracle goal. Got to finish his career with a miracle goal. I think it's a decent bookend. He got to play a considerable amount of games in the years, obviously, that we had him. I think the last 2 years, specifically this year, and I think 2022 was where it was mostly hampered by injury. No, actually, no, it was only this year. He did play.
Yeah.
He played at least, apart from 2021, he played at least 19 games for most of his seasons, which is very impressive, actually. And then obviously for 2019, it's only one because it's the famous grand final.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's, apart from stuff that I don't really want to mention on the podcast outside of football, it's a pretty short but storied career as it was.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Let's also not forget, I think it was the first year that the 2019, the mid-season draft
Correct.
was used.
That is correct.
So it's actually added, it's only a bit more to the story. I'm just looking at it now. There's only 3 more players, that being Ryan Gardner and John Noble, who are playing from that. So he was picked 13 in that mid-season. That's not until he was actually like the highest player. It's technically Hugh Greenwood, I would say. I don't know, in terms of draft pick for the retirees. But yeah, it's Chad Wingard. I forgot we covered him. Never mind.
We did cover him.
Slight gap.
The funny thing that I love about Pickett's profile and bio and stuff is that he has 2 Brownlow medal votes. I don't even know what games they're from, but he has 2.
Might have been 2 singles. You never know.
Oh, it was definitely 2 singles. I don't know what games they were from though.
Yeah, as I said, I've got no idea. But look, if you're gonna say like what the most important thing about Pickett is, and again, we're just gonna focus on his playing career. It was definitely, we say it all the time. When you've got a dynasty on your hand, the best way to continue that is to nail your fringe draft selections. Marlion Pickett was one of them. Yeah, as I said, he may not have the longest career, but his impact was undeniable. He gave the Tigers a real exciting burst of speed, especially, as you said, in that grand final. That was just such a unexpected surprise packet that no one could predict. And yeah, as I said, like any of the Pickett boys, they are very exciting to watch in different ways. But yeah, they're definitely his speed and line breaking abilities. Definitely served him well, and as said, 91 for a mid-season draft pick. You're probably lucky to find most passing 10 games after they get picked up by the mid-season draft. So, yeah, fantastic small career there.
Yeah, because the whole reason why the mid-season draft was originally brought in is to be able to top up your list if you have any massive injuries.
Injuries, yeah.
Which is
exactly.
the whole reason why we were able to get Pickett in the first place, because Sean Grigg was getting constantly injured during 2019. He couldn't get back on the park, so he decided to retire early. And this was his present to us. And it all worked out in the end. So, and I know other teams kind of went through some similar stuff in terms of using their mid-season selections.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, I think as time goes on, I think the drafting gets a tiny bit better. But yeah, as I said, yeah, teams have definitely seized this opportunity to, either pick up some overlooked, I'll say VFL, but that's, state level. That's what I'm trying to think of. Players, or, pick up some people that were overlooked in the draft that continued to go on pretty well, or maybe some like delisted player that wants a second look at it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then one little tidbit I want to add is that even though he retired last season, I want to briefly talk about Matt Parker, who originally played for St Kilda, but is also from WA and played alongside Marlion Pickett when he got picked up in 2019. Then we picked him up in 2022 in the same mid-season draft period. Fun fact. And yeah, it was cool to just, have that little bit of reconnectivity in the football world.
Yeah, I vaguely remember Matt Parker. Honestly, he was a live wire. He never quite executed as well as some of his talents showed. Because he originally was drafted for the Saints, I think.
Yes, that's correct.
And then switched over.
I believe he retired due to injury, but then he joined, or he was delisted, and then he just played a lot of waffle, and then he got we picked him up in another mid-season draft, I think.
Yeah, as I said, so as I said, so two very electric players at their best, but one was obviously a tiny bit more consistent, but yeah.
So again, we're not going to talk about outside AFL stuff, but for his career, we salute you. Thank you so much for helping us with 2 premierships. Couldn't do it without. Oh, granted, 2020 was kind of all about Dusty. He did most of the work in that one, but still, I will happily salute anyone who contributes to our premiership run, and I believe that does it for retirees. So, I just realized I was on the wrong screen for that one. Oh well, there we go. Anyway, so that does it for the retirees. And now we will move on to the All-Australian, actually. So,
yes,
we did briefly touch on this last week, that the All-Australian was out. I just actually want to bring up the squad of 40, because I forgot to bring it up. Australian 40 squad. Okay, here. Oh, no, that's 2023's. There we go. Last week's. Okay, is there a graphic that I can just go to? No, apparently there is not. Okay, so I am going to just have to do this name by name, which is fun. That's fine. Okay, so I will just bring up the list. Here we are. It's a lot of text. I apologize, but this will just be the best way to do it, unless you can find the graphic for me.
The team itself?
For the 40-man squad.
Oh, 40-man squad. Ooh.
There should be one somewhere. I can't remember where it is,
in the Discord.
Yeah, if you want to look for it, and I'll just slowly go through the players that I've got anyway.
Hang on. I'll resend it to you.
Actually, yeah, that works. You'd think I'd be a little bit more prepared on this. We've been doing this for how long now?
It's all right. I just sent you the...
No, that's just the regular team.
Yeah, no, I know what I've done.
40-man squad.
There we go.
I'm not going to cut this out. I'm going to keep this in because I think it's funny.
Oh, yeah. All right. Send that. That's the one.
That's the one. Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Okay,
No worries.
so this is the 40-man squad. Unfortunately, no Richmond players or Adelaide Crows players made it into the 40-man squad. But I mean, you kind of expect it from us for our season. But you would have thought someone like Rankin would have made it into the 40-man squad. But
Again, yeah, I think getting knocked out probably was the final straw.
yeah,
They very tentative to put injured players in. Normally, you have to play around 18 games to be considered, so a bit unlucky. His impact was all Australian, but
absolutely.
what can you do?
So the rundown very quick on the 40-man squad that was announced last Monday was for the Brisbane Lions, it's Harris Andrews, Joe Danaher, Lachie Neale, Cam Rayner, Dane Zorko. For Carlton, it's Patrick Cripps, Charlie Curnow, Harry Mackay, Jacob Wiedering. For Collingwood, it's Darcy Cameron and Nick Dacos. For Essendon, Zach Merritt. For Fremantle, it's Andrew Brayshaw, Jordan Clark, Luke Ryan, Caleb Sarong, and Hayden Young. For Geelong, it's Jeremy Cameron, Max Holmes, and Tyson Stengel. For Gold Coast Suns, it's Noah Anderson and Sam Collins, who honestly I thought should have been in the final squad because I think he's had a really good season, Sam Collins. For GWS, Brent Daniels, Jesse Hogan, and Lachie Whitfield. For Hawthorn, it's Massimo D'Ambrosio, Dylan Moore, and James Sicily. Also should have been in the 40-man squad, by the way. Max Gawn for Melbourne, Harry Sheasel and Tristan Sherry for North Melbourne. We all know my thoughts on Tristan Sherry, so I don't need to say any more about that one right now. For Port Adelaide, it's Zach Butters, Jason Horne-Francis, and Dan Houston. For St Kilda, it's Jack Sinclair. Actually well deserved. As we've talked about this season, he's had a really good season overall. For Sydney, it's Nick Blakey, Errol Golden, Isaac Heaney, and Chad Warner. For the West Coast Eagles, it's Jeremy McGovern and Jake Waterman. And for the Western Bulldogs, it's Marcus Bontempelli, Bailey Dale, and Adam Treloar. Now, we will look at the final 22-man squad, which was confirmed.
I was going to say quickly.
Yeah, go on.
Of the list of All-Australian squad, like, I'm not going to pick on people that I don't think should be there, but I would say, like, the biggest omissions for me, he definitely had a one up there, was definitely, I would say, Nick Martin for Essendon. Like, I know people rag on his disposal sometimes, but considering other the players there, and I think he actually has an impact on a lot of good scoring chains, so I would say he probably deserves to be up there.
Yeah, I agree. Also, there was one player that just came to mind that I think probably could have gotten a 40-man squad nod, and that would be Dan Rioli. Just because I think out of everyone in Richmond, he's probably the only player that's like he's played all 24 games. So that's one contribution, but also the fact that he's been the most consistent.
Yeah. Look, I haven't seen enough Richmond games to say if he had like a career, but
I don't blame you. They weren't worth watching.
Is definitely like, it's tough competition on that halfback line. But yeah, for St Kilda, I would say definitely Wilkie. I'm a bit baffled to how he wasn't in. For the Western Bulldogs, I'll say it once and I'll say it again. Ed Richards is just so important.
I think Ed Richards missed too many games. I think he was injured a little too often during the season.
He still made 18 games, I'm pretty sure.
He didn't. It was pretty close. I think it was at least like 16 plus. But I think the minimum's 18. I don't know if he made that cut.
I said I'll check, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't actually that many missed in the end. He played 20 games this season.
Oh, damn, I thought he missed more. Oh well.
No.
Yeah, this is definitely unlucky then.
Yeah, no, as I said, absolutely. But as we all know, a pretty stacked list by the Bulldogs. So yeah, as I said, there may be someone else I'm forgetting, but that's off the top of my head.
No, I agree.
So that's who I was surprised not to see in the top 40.
Yep, I completely agree with that. All right, now let's have a look at the final 22-man All-Australian squad. So we have in the back line, Nick Blakey, also known as the Lizard, Jacob Wiedering, and Luke Ryan. On the halfback, we have Dane Zorko, Jeremy McGovern, and Dan Houston. In the centre, we have Errol Golden, Marcus Bontempelli, who was named captain, and Nick Dacos. On the rucks, /followers, rucks and other parts of the midfield, we've got Max Gawn, Patrick Cripps, who was named vice-captain, and Caleb Sarong. Half forwards, we've got Chad Warner, Jeremy Cameron, and Isaac Heaney. For forwards. Words are hard sometimes. Jake Waterman, Jesse Hogan, and Dylan Moore. And on the interchange, we've got Lockie Whitfield, Lockie Neal, Adam Treloar, and Zach Butters. It's literally a midfielder's dream, but a nightmare for everyone else because it's not a balanced team.
No, it isn't. And look, there's a lot of controversy, that comes out every year with it. And look, obviously, I'm fine with it. I prefer a much more balanced team. But it's funny because you got one hand that people are saying, oh, so many midfielders, yada, yada, yada. And then people are like, oh, where's Zach Merritt? Oh, where's, who's the other midfielder that mixed up? I don't know. I would have honestly said Matt Rouse have been unlucky, but
Matt Rouse wasn't even in the 40-man squad, but yeah, I agree.
Wait, Matt Rouse wasn't in the 40-man squad.
No,
That's
he
who
wasn't.
I was forgetting. That's insane. The hell? Anyway, look, it's always hard when you actually make your team. Like I said, me and Blaze went through it, and it's a lot harder.
Speaking of, I will actually bring up our comparison whilst I'm at it. Not that one, this one.
Yeah.
So we got most pieces kind of correct. So we had Wiedering, McGovern, Houston, Bontempelli, Golden, Hogan, Dylan Moore, Patrick Cripps, Caleb Sarong, Isaac Heaney, and that's it. We had 9 correct.
Yeah, as I said, individual ones probably differed a tiny bit more because, as I said, I remember having Jeremy Cameron. I think
you had Max Gawn. I had Sherry.
Max Gawn.
So there was definitely a few differences.
Jeez.
Shush.
I mean, we can talk about that now. As I said, look, if you're gonna go one, it's very hard to split hairs. I know people say Cherry's, underrated. Not underrated, but definitely a bit harsh. But it's one spot, and Max Gawn is like
if you're designing a team around having only one ruckman, it is very hard to choose.
Yeah, I would say just the versatility of Max Gawn. Like, Cherry's probably better tap. And I actually looked at the stats because I was interested because I'd say Max Gawn this year, some of his best works actually has been his defensive works. And I did actually notice, his offensive output's actually outmatched by Cherry, which I was a bit surprised at. But again, it's just so splitting hairs. They're two absolutely phenomenal attack careers. And, as I said, we've put so much emphasis on one rock spot. It's very unfair when, as I said, there's just not that much between
especially
them.
when they have 3 tall forwards in the forward line in Cameron, Hogan, and Waterman.
Exactly. As I said, and I'm not even saying that those positions are necessarily always
they've also got a very tall back line as well, to be fair.
Yeah. Look, that's the next thing I'm going to talk about. So Max Gawn, I don't think there should be actually any controversy. It's just a bit saddening.
It was basically a coin flip kind of selection, really. Like, they were that close for the most part.
It's just insane. Like, Cherry Martwin is near best and fairest, to be fair. I'm not sure what will happen there. Probably not.
It'll either be him or Sheasel or, like, Wardlaw. Maybe even LDU.
I'll say LDU, probably.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But again, full props to Sherry because I'm not going to say it's like, Max Gawn's undeniably, but no, it's just, when it's so far between, so close, it's just always.
And just the other note on Max Gawn, this is his 7th All-Australian.
I was going to say,
and he's still got enough. Still got enough in his career to be able to break the record too.
Yeah, exactly. Very great by there. I don't know how you feel, but I definitely feel like the back line is the weakest, in my opinion.
I like it. I just feel like it's a little too tall. Is my issue.
I'm not gonna knock him because he's still an alright player, but I just don't have Luke Ryan anywhere near with some of the great defensive performances. Luke Ryan to me is just.
If we look at ours, we had Alex Pearce in there, and also Ed Richards. So that's kind of an easy swap to probably put Ed Richards in there instead, to be honest, because he's not as tall, but he's like very fast, and he's like very, very important
Yeah,
for the
well,
Doggies
look, as I
backline
said,
at the
I'm not
moment.
saying like I want to fix this team. You know what I mean? It's just
No,
like
like everyone does
players.
deserve
You,
to be all Australian, but
yeah, exactly. It's just I'm very. I don't think this is like a. I think even Luke Ryan himself would be very. I don't think he would say that this is one of his best seasons. Um, and like the rest are variable. Like Blakey, I think there's been a few more consistent performers than Blakey. But his best is absolutely fantastic. I've already said
absolutely.
Zorko. Um, as I said, he's had a few games
I
where it's
thought
been
Zorko was very
flat,
important to
but
Brisbane's backline this season. Like he stepped up
yeah,
massively when
no,
he's
no, I
needed
said
to.
like
But
honestly, if you're gonna pick a variable player, I would definitely because I said I originally picked Zorko, and then I was just sort of, again, it's just so hard when you got someone like Nick Martin who, again, like will do one or few errors per game, but Zorko is more like, yeah, he'll have like 3 really flat games a season, but then produce some behemoth performances. So,
absolutely.
um, yeah, um, as I said, the other pick that yeah, again, may have been controversial. I don't really care. Jake Waterman in the forward line over A, another small forward, or B,
I would have
another
definitely put
top
another small
corner.
forward, but I don't know who. Is there anyone
As
that
I said, I would
specifically would have jumped out for you?
like maybe Stengel or the Brent Daniels.
Yeah,
Um,
Brent Daniels would have been a good
on
shout.
I think, yeah, as I said, I think distribution definitely needed to be rewarded because I said you can have Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner in half forward. Like again, I probably wouldn't have said Warner's quite uh, you know, consistent, but his best was really fantastic. But you know what I mean? It's just Warner and Heaney definitely don't really play pure forward. And yeah, just
No,
having
they're
Dylan
definitely more
Moore be the
midfielders over forwards.
again, be the sole representation because again, he's fantastic here. I'd have him as the number 1 small forward, and then maybe a toss up between Daniels and Stengel. I thought it was going to go Stengel, and then Daniels had like a really, really good last couple of games. So yeah, as I said, like preference to me, like as I said, I don't really care who gets All Australian. I just like to see different roles get represented.
Yeah.
Obviously Nick Dacos being on the wing is the other one. There's not another winger. You would like to see Massimum, or as I said, Bine. I
Goal.
technically would have put Ed Richards on the wing.
Yeah, I would have put
Uh,
Ed Richards or Massimo D'Ambrosio because
yeah,
they're the pure
exactly.
wingers out of the ones that were selected in the 40
Exactly. And
man.
as I said, Gordon, he's definitely the best. Even he's been a bit shakier.
Yeah, he
You could
started getting
actually
tagged a
argue
lot
that.
more and it kind of shut down his season.
Yeah, like there's a few games where he's been shut down. So you can actually argue Massimo had a better year than him. But again, like, Max Corn and Cherry, it's such a coin flip. Whereas I said, I definitely think you could get rid of like some of the 7th best midfielders. Like, I don't know. I would say Lockie Neal, he had a good back half of the year, so maybe. But yeah, as I said, you could get rid of one of like Lockie Neal or Whitfield or Trelaw might be a bit harsh, but you know what I
Trelaw
mean?
would
It's
be
just
very
one of
harsh
those
because I
things
think he's
where,
had a really, really good season,
oh yeah, but
especially when like players around him were like dealing with a lot of injuries, like what's his name? The one that I really, really like that I'm blanking on right now.
uh,
Uh,
uh, b- 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 uh, Liberatore.
yes, Liver. Thank you. Like yeah, Liver's been out like for half of the season with a lot of injuries, so he's had to. Trelaw had to step up massively, and it showed in being able to be selected for All Australian.
Yeah, exactly. But as I said, it's just one of those things. It's yeah, I mean, it's like the Brownlow last year, and I did find it funny because I don't know if you caught this, but Brisbane actually put up a post a couple of days ago, like literally complaining about Harris Andrews not making All Australian, which was a bit eyebrow raising
I
because, like,
agree. Granted, I think Harris Andrews has had a decent season, no doubt. But
yeah,
you look at this backline already. You look at the 40 man squad already, and it's like there was a lot of very worthwhile backline selections.
yeah, as I said, like, I said, I don't think Luke Ryan makes it, but as I said, it's just like, if Luke Ryan was replaced with Sam Collins and Harris Andrews was left out, I wouldn't have minded. It's just, yeah, it's just. it's just not a good look to really focus that much about individual awards. Like
No.
when you're a team social media account, like as I said, it's disappointing, like no doubt.
If
And I
if
definitely do think
if you want a
some
good
players
outline for
after.
being a good social media account, just copy what GWS is doing because they are top of the line right now.
Yeah, like
But in terms of
GWS would have made like a 5 second meme about him not being
yeah, in terms of
selected. You
meme
would have
posting,
chuckled and then
GWS the goats at it. Their social media team needs a raise. In terms of graphic usage, whether it's day by day, like for game days or for otherwise, I think the Richmond social media team has done a wonderful job this season, and I also think they should deserve a raise. Um, but also every social
yeah,
media team deserves a raise. There's a lot of work that goes into
yeah, it's a
being
lot of hardworking one. Yeah,
into that sort of role. But yeah, like yeah, it's a bit weird that they would do that to Harris Andrews when it's you're also meant to be playing finals this week, so it's like, wouldn't you rather
exactly.
focus on that?
Look, as I said, I don't think like the whole team was sitting around like contributing to that article instead doing their team meetings on Monday. But yeah, as I said, I don't think they would really want that sort of noise, but that'll
Nah,
be forgotten very quickly. But yeah, as I said, um, it's just a bit of funniness to come out of it. But as I said, all Australian. I definitely think at the end of the day, when you have a career, um, you'll probably find that you'll get there one or two All Australians, and you probably deserve it. It may not even be on like the correct year, but you'll probably find you've got it.
mm.
There'll be unlucky people, but there's always unlucky people in the AFL.
Yeah,
So,
and plus
um,
as the years go on, younger players will see their time in the spotlight. Older players will retire. Stuff like that.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, as I said, it's just, as I said, it would be a shame if like this was like Brent Daniels' best year. But as I said, you never know.
I don't know.
As I said, just
GWS just locked him down to a massive contract, so I think he's.
yeah, no, that would hope he's
I think he's still
performing
got
nice,
plenty
but
of
you know
years
what
of
I mean.
great footy.
Yeah, you just don't want to assume anything too much. But yeah, as I said, yeah, as I said, congratulations to Olga in, and even the selection panel. I know that you can claim bias and all that, but it is hard to pick a team, especially when it's so
I don't
collaborative.
honestly.
So
I can't remember exactly who everyone is on the selection panel. I know Nathan Buckley was one of them. But you
yeah,
look at this team, and it's like there's not really any bias there, like at all. Not even with Nick Dacos, because like you look at a lot of players throughout the season. Like, granted, I didn't put Nick Dacos in my All Australian, because I
yeah,
personally didn't rate him all that highly. But if you look at, I guess, the other sort of like the Collingwood players around him, he was easily their best player this season, no doubt.
yeah. Look, as I said, as I said, I got no idea. I think Nick Dacos. It's sort of a hard one. Like, I think he'll be a near Brownlow favorite just
Yeah,
because of
granted,
the
he's also
style he plays.
the media's favorite. So
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean? It's like I agree with you. I wouldn't put him in the top three midfielders. Or maybe I would. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't put him on. Um,
no, yeah, not
yeah,
when you
but
have like Bontempelli and Patrick Cripps right there.
Bontempelli, yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. So, but yeah, so it doesn't really bother me that much. It's just I I'm just like the sort of person that likes smaller roles and players playing those small roles to
Mm.
perfection to get knowledge a bit more. But that's why we have these discussions on the podcast, so we have a chance
Yeah,
to
exactly.
highlight and commend them. So
And it's like,
I hope
obviously
anyone
I
listening,
love, I love like, my Dustin Martins, my Jack Rewalds, Trent
yeah,
Hutchins, Alex Rance, etc., etc. But like I love role players because that's what makes the premiership team. It's not the superstar. It's not necessarily just the superstars. It's the smaller players within a team that do a certain role to perfection. Like I'm going to use our premiership years for an example. Like your Kane Lamberts, your Shane Edwards,
hmm,
players like that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
Shane Edwards is one of those players that like probably never made an All Australian, but it's just so important.
I think he made
Um,
one off the top of my head. I think it was 2019.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
I
we
might
may
have
be
to look
we may or may not be doing a bonus videos one of these days.
at
So
some
we sort
point.
of got some 2000s All Australians racking up in our heads. So
We're definitely
but yeah, as
thinking
I
about
said,
it.
yeah, definitely thinking about it. But yeah, as I said, it's always interesting to have a look at. I don't as I said, in terms of individual awards, I'm not huge into much of them except maybe the coaches association, which I will mention we will go through
Yes, we'll touch on that very
shortly.
shortly.
But yeah, as I said, I do think, yeah, as I said, players should definitely be proud because, AFL careers been crippled. Like some of them end before they even begin. You can get an ACL injury in your draft year and never make the football field, even though you might have made an All-Australian. So, to make it, to be recognised, yeah, as I said, for a lot of them, a lot of these players, it's cream on the top. Like, Max Gawn doesn't necessarily need another one, but at the same time,
He's also not going to say no to another one.
Oh no, I said it adds to his sort of legacy as like one of the best, well, probably the best ruckman of the last decade. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to quickly just go through the All-Australian team selected by fans. So these are all the submissions that we all personally made, including our own submissions, as to what we wanted the All-Australian to look like. So for the backline, it's Dane Zorko, Jacob Weitering, Luke Ryan, Lachie Whitfield, Harris Andrews, Harry Sheasel. In the centre, it's Errol Golden, Patrick Cripps, Zach Merritt. In the forward line, it's Isaac Heaney, Charlie Curnow, Marcus Bontempelli, Dylan Moore, Jesse Hogan, Jeremy Cameron, which isn't actually all that far off what actually happened. Just swap a couple of balls around, take Charlie Curnow out. For the followers, it's Tristan Sherry, Nick Dacos and Lachie Neale, and then on the bench it's Adam Treloar, Caleb Sarong, Zach Butters, and Jake Waterman. So overall, very, very close to what the selection actually was.
Yeah, it's some weird irony how people complain that Jake Waterman's in here, and yet the fan one has him in. So I know it's always a bit different. You get, West Coast Eagles are very well represented in their fan base. So you always get a bit of that.
I think in this entire list, there's only 3 players that actually aren't in the official 22, and that's Sheasel, Merritt, and Curnow.
Yeah, pretty much. And, as I said, Curnow must have been like a very much a coin toss. We're still baffled to how they were able to vote for Jeremy Cameron because we weren't able to. Maybe that was just like the AFL trying to
They just really wanted Josh Tracy in there.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. But yeah, as I said, Zach Merritt, Essendon fans are pretty livid that he's not in. Absolutely. I would argue that statistic-wise, he's very interchangeable with others, but there's no doubt, as I said, a lot of his things is what you see.
Yeah, he was easily Essendon's best player this season, by far. And
Oh, exactly.
Even he deserved to at least, be stand out in the 40, but...
Yeah. And then you got, awkward Harry Sheasel, who, it depends. If you looked at him as a midfielder, which he spent probably half his time a bit more, you'd say, oh, he doesn't quite stack up to some of the others, but that's only because there's so many good midfielders this year.
Yep,
and if you look at him as a half-back, which is probably not a true reflection, but he definitely would be in the squad. So, as I said, but, always a fan favourite. He'll get there in time. His role gets more defined because there's no yet doubt he's pretty great with the ball. As I said, again, midfielders, as much as I say there's so much midfield bias, there's also, a lot of really good midfield performers as well. So, while I haven't mentioned Sheasel, he's definitely worthy of consideration. Definitely good squad entry. Should be proud of getting into the squad so early in his career.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now the last bit of All-Australian stuff that I want to talk about is the one stat All-Australian that Cyril thankfully showed me the other day. So this graphic is all about players who were number 1 in a specific field or a specific statistic that's tracked by the AFL, by Champion Data, etc., etc. And it's a pretty interesting list. And honestly, I think it's still a pretty stacked team overall, which is very interesting to me. So we'll run through it. We'll go. So I'll mention player and the stat that they're number 1 in, and we'll just go per down the list in terms of positions. So we'll start in fullback.
I might explain.
Oh yeah, if you want to explain some of them as we go. So for fullback, it's Harris Andrews, number 1 in intercept marks.
Yep. Intercept marks obviously being marks from an opponent kick.
Yes. Darcy Moore with spoils.
Yep, just punching the ball away from a contest.
Sam Collins with intercept possessions.
It's basically when you pick up a ball that's come from an opposition disposal.
Yes. On halfback, we have Luke Ryan with kick-in play-ons.
Just running out of the goal square, bombing it long.
Jacob
Luke Ryan's
Wiedering's one is very, very interesting because it's
Kadoo!
contested disposal 1-on-1 win percentage.
Contested defensive 1-on-1 percentage.
Thank you.
Basically, this is a very tough one to explain. A 1-on-1 contest, which we have to explain first, is a contest where there's basically a forward and a defender who both have equal opportunity to mark the ball.
Mhm.
So they both have to have an attempt to either spoil or not spoil, mark or spoil. And contested defensive 1-on-1 win percentage means that of those contests, your opponent takes the least amount of marks. So either you spoil it away, or you make the contest enough to where it spills, or you take the mark yourself as an intercept mark. But there has to be contestedness, which is so weird. You would be surprised the amount of contest marks that aren't actually, sorry, the opposite. Marks that you think are contest that get counted as uncontested.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go through that, but it does put Jacob Wiedering as probably one of the best 1-on-1 defenders.
Well, that's why he made All Australian. Like, he is one of the best 1-on-1 defenders.
I wouldn't use that pure stat to do it. Especially, and you wouldn't compare CDO for, like, again, someone like Jacob Wieding to maybe like a Harris Andrews or a Waterman. Not Waterman.
McGovern.
McGovern, who are more coming off the contest. But, you know, as I said, it is still, I think it's like 12% win rate or something like ridiculously low. So,
okay. Fair enough. All right, next is Nick Martin for uncontested possessions. This one is pretty self-explanatory. It's, you know, when you get the ball without making a contest.
Technically, it's when you get the ball that isn't in dispute. So from a clean possession from another player.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty much it, actually.
And then on the center, we have Errol Golden for meters gained. Which is, so that, I'll explain this one. So this involves either running with the ball or how far forward your said player can make the ball travel towards the next towards the next contest or towards the next player. Errol Golden's been massive in that pretty much all season long. I think he's not just in meters gained, but I think even just pure running, even without the ball, I think he's one of the highest ranked players.
Yeah, no, he's a freakish athlete. You know, as I said,
should have been an Olympian, honestly. How much he runs.
Yeah, like, we were skeptical, like, when Sydney did have that drop off, like, whether, like, a player like Goulden was getting gas, but even he seemed to turn it around, show that, he could just capably play that role. He just had a few dud games. When I say dud games, I mean, like, 2, but you know what I mean? It's just, and he was tagged for those, so.
Very fair. All right, next is Marcus Bontempelli for rating points. This is related to the AFL fantasy ratings as a player gets rated.
No, it's champion data.
Champion data ratings.
AFL fantasy slightly different. So AFL fantasy only takes possession. Champion data takes some of the disposal effectiveness and puts weighting on certain types of entries or whatnot. So a kick inside 50 that finds a target is going to get you more points than a kick inside 50 that goes to ground.
Okay.
Just for an example.
That makes sense. Chad Warner for bounces. That one's self-explanatory. He's done the most bounces with the ball. All right. Half forward is Brent Daniels with goal assists.
So it's a disposal that leads to a direct goal.
Yeah, again, kind of self-explanatory on that one. Jake Waterman for marks on lead, which is when you take a mark on a lead.
Yeah, you get separation from your opponent, basically.
It's not exactly a contested mark, but it's also not exactly an uncontested mark either.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I think they do still count as uncontested marks. So, yeah, it's always a bit weird, but that's just getting a bit into stat niches. But Jake Waterman, one of the best leaders in the comp this year.
Absolutely. Tyson Stengel for forward 50 ground ball gets.
Yep. So whether it's a ball in dispute, hit out from a ruck contest, or not in dispute, Yeah, it's just picking it up.
Simple as that. For full forward, Jeremy Cameron for shots at goal. Again, this is self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Jesse Hogan for
Um,
goals, which is also self-explanatory because he won the Coleman
yep.
Medal. Sam Switkowski for tackles inside 50.
Just all the tackles that are inside 50. Forward 50, I should say.
Yes, that's why he's in the full forward, not specifically,
Yeah.
somewhere else. Well, followers, Riley O'Brien for hitouts. I don't know if this is specifically.
Nah, these just pure
considering
hitouts.
I figure, but I feel like it's a little bit skewed because he also missed some games at the same time. So I don't know if it's going off of just
you'll be surprised. He
max
does
number,
win a
or if
lot
it's
of
just
hitouts.
or it's just
It's
average.
just- honestly, Riley O'Brien gets a lot of hitouts. Yeah, I think it's actually total. I'm not sure though. I must admit I didn't actually read enough about this graphic, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it was total. He wraps up so much. A lot of his flack is actually how effective he is with the taps.
Okay.
But
he does get the taps. So
he only missed 2 games or 3. I can't remember.
It was during that that period, like sort of this early part of the second half of the season is when he missed a couple of games, and we were wondering why he was taken out.
No, yeah, he was dropped. Like, there's no doubt he was dropped. But yeah, as I said, yeah, so it's sort of funny he still wins that, despite, which shows how much he does win it. But again, I don't know. I'll probably make a comment if I'm completely wrong about it being total and not average.
I don't know. We'll find out later. Next is Patrick Cripps for clearances. This would be total clearances across the entire season.
Yep, so clearances from stoppage and clearances from center clearance.
Isaac Heaney for score involvements.
Yep, any chain that leads to a goal or a behind. If you're part of that chain, yeah, that chain has to be unbroken, I should say.
Yeah, so if it's contested, or if a player just immediately takes an intercept or steals the ball away from that specific chain, it doesn't count. Tristan Sherry for centre bounce attendance rate percentage.
Yep, the centre bounce after a goal or the start of quarter, how often you appear, percentages of all available, he appears the most.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like 93 or something ridiculously high.
Yeah, it's kind of massive. Noah Anderson for inside 50s.
Yeah, kicking the ball inside your forward 50.
Adam Treloar for the most disposals over the entire season.
Yep, disposal.
That's also pretty crazy though.
Yeah, no, he's had a mammoth season. Definitely gone under the radar compared to Bontempelli, but definitely to, Batman and Robin sort of players.
Yeah,
they complement each other.
And then Matt Rowell with tackles, which makes a lot of sense because he's known purely for his tackling pressure. I'm pretty sure he's hit double digits almost every game this season.
Yeah, I will say Rowbottom as well. They both weirdly shifted from more tackling game to a more possession game near the end of the year, which I found very interesting. But they both averaged about 9.5 for like the first half of the season. It was pretty insane. I
think part of that, at least for Matt Rowell's transition, was related to Touk Miller being out with injury, so he had to fill that sort of role briefly.
Yeah.
And then the last one, which I think is really, really funny, and I showed this to my Hawthorn mate at work, who also thought it was really funny, is Luke Bruce played the most games starting as a sub, which honestly, being one of Hawthorn's last veteran players, him and Jack Gunston, it makes a lot of sense, actually. Like, your body, at the age that he is, your body's getting old. You want to try and use as much energy, like, at the right time. So I feel like playing him, or I know Gunston, I think it's done this a couple of times as well. Like, starting as a sub, if you've needed to, it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And as I said, there's no doubt he's obviously not got the tank to run out full games anymore. But as I said, when players tire out, you can get that separation. It's actually pretty smart because, he's not going to get those contested marks, but he's gotten a few marks on lead. There's an excellent shot on goal. And Hawthorn, if you're going to give him a weakness, it probably still would be forward line. But that's only compared to other finals team. I will say their forward line's been quite functional for, what it is on paper. especially for how young some of the players are. So,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I can't remember if it was last week's game or week before, sorry, against North, or it was the week before that against Richmond, where
yeah,
like he was subbed in like in the right into the first quarter, into the second quarter, and still kicked 3 goals.
yeah.
Like,
No, it's definitely still a very useful player, and it's no doubt they're not playing, just to artificially inflate his games. He definitely serves a role.
mhm.
But yeah, as I said, he's just not quite a full-time player. It might be his last year. He might go for one more, but he's definitely involved in Hawthorn, so I wouldn't be surprised if, again, he's the sort of player that goes on to another, like, sort of coaching role after he's finished up.
As long as he doesn't pull a Sam Mitchell and do the Sam Mitchell where they did the clock.
Sam Mitchell.
Yeah, exactly right. All right.
Yeah, maybe.
So before we move on to the ladder and our early preseason predictions, I want to talk about the AFL awards. So over the past weekend slash earlier last week, actually no, it was literally over the weekend. We
Hmm.
also got the Coaches Awards and the Player Association Awards, and also Rising Star as well. So we're just going to quickly talk about those, starting with AFL Coach's Best Young Player Award, which went to Harry Sheezel. I don't think either of us are really all that surprised. Granted, when you look at the 22 under 22, that's
Oh yeah, it's a lot of
that's
competition.
a stacked lineup.
But yeah, as I said, for Sheasel to be amongst like top 20 midfielder, like I know that's pretty broad, but yeah, as I said, I'll maybe even restrict that to 15. Being so young, and as I said, even being amongst his peers, there's already a couple of few years ahead of him, that he's sort of at least side by side with. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And his decision making with the ball too. He plays older than he is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also just found a graphic that would help me explain what the 22 under 22 squad is. So I'll just bring that up very quickly. So this is the 22 under 22 squad. It's basically players under the age of 22 who have played, I believe it's played a specific amount of games, or at least have had notable performances in their early careers so far. And they're essentially players that the AFL or the Rising Star sort of program wants us to watch going forward, essentially. So it's
Yeah, it's pretty much just the All Australian for under 22 players.
yeah. So it's like Josh Rochelle, Kyle Lohman, Elijah Hollins, Jai Amos, Josh Tracy, Connor McDonald, Jack Ginnivan, Jacob Van Royen, Paul Curtis, Logan McDonald, Jamara Ugle-Hagan, Jake Saligo, Nick Dacos, Ollie Dempsey, Tanner Bruin, Sam Closey, Finn Callahan, Massimo D'Ambrosio. I'm surprised he's still that young. Honestly, I thought he was older.
Yeah, I know.
Caleb Windsor, Tom Powell, Harry Sheasel, George Wardlaw, Jace Burgoyne, Jason Horn-Francis, Errol Goulden, Harley Reid, Ruben Gibney, Luke Jackson, who I thought was much older as well. I didn't realize he was still only under 22.
It's his final year of being 22, but he's still 22.
Sam Darcy, Max Michaelani from the Adelaide Crows, Darcy Wilmot,
Hmm.
Josh Draper, Max Holmes, Brody Hewland, Mac Andrew, Josh Weddle, Judd McVie, Colby McKercher, Isaiah Wanganeen Millerer, and Brady Hoff.
Yep.
Which is a pretty stacked lineup when you think about it.
Yeah, no, I said you don't want to get too carried away for early in a lot of players' careers, but there's definitely a lot that you think would be making like 200 plus games for sure on that list.
Absolutely. And then the AFL Coaches Award specifically is literally just called the AFL Coaches Award. For I believe it's for the best player all round. Not necessarily. It's basically their MVP because the Players Association and the coaches have their separate MVPs.
Yeah, so basically after every match, the coaches give a 5-2-1. Oh, sorry,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
5-4-3-2-1 vote. They put them together. So if you got 10, that means each coach thought you were the best player on ground, opposition and player coach. And yeah, as I said, and that's just distributed,
It's similar
counted up at the end
process
of the
to
year.
what the umpires do for the Brownlow, essentially, except they go 3-2-1.
Yeah, it's just with 5. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And 2
And
sets of
so the
eyes,
AFL
obviously.
Coaches Award went to Nick Dacos. Again, I don't think many people
Yeah.
are really surprised about that.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Uh,
think, yeah, as I said, even though we might argue that Nick Dacos has been tagged out of a few matches, definitely on the matches he is good. He's just getting 10 every time because he's
Absolutely.
just, yeah, his impact's there. And obviously, like, he's still normally in and about. Like, he would have got a few double ones and all that sort of thing carrying him along too. So,
Like, yeah, even when, his brother or like some other notable player in that game has scored much higher than him, he's definitely at least gotten a one
yeah.
because he's always had that
Yeah,
sort of
like if
impact.
Bobby Hill would have had a couple of really good games, Darcy Cameron,
Jeremy Howe's
yeah,
had a few good ones, players like
yeah,
that.
probably
Jack
too.
Crisp,
Yeah,
I think, has also been pretty consistent this season.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Um,
anyway,
I will say I think there's like a pretty big gap between Nick Dacos and the next best Collingwood player, so that
oh
always
yeah, no, for
helps.
sure. But it's like sometimes he just
Yeah,
doesn't always hit the tens.
yeah.
All right,
But
now
yeah,
let's move on to the Players Association, which has more awards than just the coaches, because they recognize their fellow men very, very, very much, very convincingly because they're always they're directly on the field playing against said opponents, so
mhm.
they get to experience how I wouldn't say how much
Yeah,
better,
exactly.
but how more interesting it is to play up against the players that they voted for.
Yeah, exactly. You just feel a lot of the small things a lot more on the ground than you do.
Yeah,
At least
absolutely.
for the players that get a vote. But I
Yeah.
think it's a selection panel from the leaders of the AFLPA.
Yeah, but I think all players do get some kind of say, and it's just kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
it's like
Each
a
club has a
collective sort of agreement.
representation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think each club has an AFLPA representative,
Yes,
and
I
I
believe
think
that's
that's the
correct.
person who votes. But
So the Players Association best captain is Marcus Bontempelli. Best first year player
it's
is
straightforward.
Harley Reid, which I don't think anyone's surprised about that.
No.
The Players Association most courageous player this year went to Zach Butters, which
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, he courageously put his fists into other players' chests and
Yep.
brought a lot of fines for the betterment of the league.
Well, if it wasn't him,
No,
it was
I'm
probably going to
kidding.
be Rosie.
Look,
Let's be real.
he is brave. Like as I said, no doubt about that. Sometimes too brave, I would say. But yeah, as I said, no doubt his courage. I
Mm,
love him.
absolutely. And then the Players Association MVP also went to Marcus Bontempelli. Well deserved.
Ah,
And even
no
if he
doubt.
doesn't win the Brownlow this season, it's good that he's been recognized by his peers for how much work he
Yeah,
does.
absolutely. Yeah, as I said, he's so good, and I would be very disappointed if he didn't get a Brownlow.
Mm.
But again, he has won the AFL's coaches. Oh, sorry, coaches award before, so he has had a
Yes,
top
it's true.
tier player recognition.
And then the last one out of the award season and over the past week is the Rising Star, which was won
Oh,
by round one nominee, mind you, Ollie Dempsey.
yeah, look, pretty.
Pretty consistent season, I would say. Well, it
Yeah,
has to
exactly.
be able to get the Rising Star.
Yeah, as I said, it's like one of those things that they said, oh, I said Harley Reid, or Sam Darcy, it's just his award because they got robbed out. But I think it still would have been pretty close. Like Harley definitely had some of the better games. But yeah, as I said, Ollie Dempsey was pretty consistent as a leading option in that forward line. As I said, Geelong's attacks just so dangerous this year, and it's partially due to just some of the smaller things like Ollie Henry or Ollie Dempsey, I
Mm-hmm.
should say. Ollie Henry's been good too. Or even like someone like a Shannon Neal.
I
As I
don't think
said,
Shannon Neal
it's
would have
just
has played enough games for one to
oh no,
be
no, not
massively
for Rising
considered.
Star. I'm just saying for Collingwood's
For
Geelong's
Geelong's,
forward line.
oh, absolutely,
Just
especially when Hawkins been out with injury, he's been massive.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, look, it's not fair for the rest of the league that Geelong just pull players out like this. But yeah, as I said, in terms of Ollie Dempsey, definitely a tiny bit up and down compared to other Rising Star nominations, but there's no doubt the amount of raw talent and athleticism you see in him, and the fact that he's able to convert into at least producing a tiny bit. He does a few off the ball stuff as well, so very worthy winner.
Absolutely. And that pretty much does it for our awards period. Next on the list, we are going to look at the ladder, and then we're going to go back and look at our preseason predictions. So we are prepared for some embarrassment because a lot of our
Tiny
selections are very wrong. So
Yeah.
as we saw at the end of last week's episode, I'll just quickly run through it again. Sydney Swans, Port Adelaide, Geelong, GWS, Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, Carlton, Collingwood, Fremantle, Essendon, St Kilda, Gold Coast Suns, Melbourne, Adelaide, West Coast Eagles, North Melbourne, and Richmond make up the 18. And let's look at mine first. Actually, no, let's look at yours first. Yours is a lot neater.
I was gonna say we'll go from the top to the bottom, and then we'll talk about some of the bottom 10 teams. So like Sydney, I personally had them 4th to 10th. So in my range, I was +3 over, and on my ladder, I put them 9th. So I was very pessimistic on my gut feel on them. But yeah, as I said, it was, I definitely underrated. Well, first of all, like one of my biggest concerns was like forward depth, which is still
a problem.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just like they had so many good things around it. So yeah, as I said, so I sort of, also, moving Heaney to that midfield straight away, like it was a move of necessity that ended up being a masterstroke because, I said how good Heaney's season was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely underrated those two aspects.
And then for mine, I had them placed at 8th to 11th. So basically the exact same sort of positioning that you kind of had them in. Again, we as we discussed, it was forward issues for us primarily, which again still kind of is as you look, which is considering the rumor that Sydney are also looking at Jake Stringer, to pull him out of Essendon, considering he's after a 2-year deal. Essendon only wants to give him 1, and I don't blame them.
Yeah,
like he's had a pretty average season.
Mid, yeah.
But what Sydney need, which is currently what none of their forwards are actually offering, is consistency up forward because they have 7 players who've kicked over 20 goals this season. But whereas you look at Essendon, Jake Stringer kicked 43 goals this season. So they're just looking for someone who's gonna present better, which is, again, this is probably going to be an issue going into this finals season or these final couple of weeks.
Yeah, look, it's not as bad as like I said, we're talking about like one flaw. Every team's flawed, but as I said, it's definitely one of those weird things where like first on the ladder definitely has like that vulnerability about them, but I guess that's just how open the season is as well.
Sorry.
All right.
Port Adelaide.
I was gonna say, should we go? Yeah, Port Adelaide.
We'll just go down the actual ladder and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah.
So Port Adelaide is next, which you predicted correctly.
Yeah, 1 to 5th finals lock. They finished second. Not too much to talk about.
You had them second on your ladder, so I would say it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, I forgot that. As I said, it's just one of those things where their defense I thought was going to improve. It took a bit longer than I thought, but it did. Their forward line, again, a bit hit or miss, but that midfield developing. I don't think anyone would have been a particularly brave pundit if they saw that development coming because it's a bunch of young players playing absolutely fantastically.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then for mine, I had them finishing top 4 as well. I didn't really give them a solid position just because, again, my concern was primarily with the ruck usage because, again, you guys took Soldo from us. He wanted the number 1 ruck spot, even though we knew he had some inconsistencies in his game. Obviously, you started playing Jordan Sweet more now that he's like in some pretty good form, which definitely helped with solidifying your midfield as well.
And
then some issues with your defensive game, which again seemed to have worked out very well. But I don't think there was any doubt for both of us that they were gonna finish top 4.
Yeah, they're very consistent regular season performance under Ian Hinkley. Again, haven't finished under 10 wins, so always safe to put him at roundabouts.
It's always middle of the year that they seem to hit that hard patch where everyone starts to doubt them, and this time they just come back.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
But
it's
yeah,
it's
as I
it's
said,
the
one of the
cycle
more
of misery
optimistic.
for Port Adelaide.
I wouldn't say that. Like I said, I think some of the fade outs you could sort of see coming because, like, again, even last year, like they came back after looking a bit shaky, but then they also like, well, I said they got that 10-win period in a row, 13, I think it was.
Mm.
But then a few issues at the end. So, yeah, as I said, I'm still looking forward to finals, even though, as I said, as a Ken Hinkley supporter, or like, a supporter of a Ken Hinkley team, you're always a bit wary of finals.
Mm. Yeah, well, it comes with the job, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, next is Geelong.
Yeah. So I was pessimistic on them, technically.
So was I, to be fair.
I put them as sixth, but I also put the range as 6 to 10th, I think it was. Yep. So I underestimated them by 3. Um, but as I said, I think most of what I said was true. I thought they would get a few more wins. Because they only had fairly close losses. Last year,
Mm-hmm.
I thought their midfield was a bit of a wait and see. I didn't know how their forward line would come together as much. But yeah, as I said, I think it's just like one of the. It's so weird. Like it wasn't a dominant for third spot. Like they definitely had those patches, but again, it's just when they like there's a weird consistency. Like they've had patches where they're a bit off, but
Mm.
they've always just managed to paper it over. Again, when you have a good experienced coach at the helm, you tend to do that. As I said, but definitely if you like look at each 3 lines, as I said, only the forward line stands above others to me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
normally in a top 4, you're looking at like one really good line and maybe like an at least okay one of the other 2. Um, but yeah, so it's so weird. Like Geelong's defense is a bit, eh. Geelong's midfield's a bit, it gets it done.
Geelong's
But
midfield's
yeah, as I
gotten
said,
better as the season's gone on.
it has. I definitely think it's more serviceable than good. But as I said, with that forward line, you only need serviceable. So, yeah, um, they finished third. In what was again another great year for Chris Scott.
Yeah. For mine, I put them also about 6th to 10th. Again, my issues were primarily with their defense and their midfield. Um, and as the season kind of went on, their forward line as well, especially when Hawkins started having some pretty middling performances, and then just went out straight away with injury anyway, and then obviously announced his retirement. Um, so yeah, my primary issues were with that. Obviously, as the season went on, they started to, especially towards the second half of the season, they started to get a lot better. They finally found bits that worked. Lawson Humphreys has been amazing for them just
Oh, absolutely.
just to point out a standout player that's come out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like they were really hard to predict. Like I wasn't expecting them to make top 4, especially after the season that they had prior. Um,
Yeah,
but
you didn't want to rule out capability, but
no,
again, it's
because
just like,
they're still very much a top 8 viable team. But I was like, no, I don't think
yeah,
anyone
it's
was
just
massively expecting top 4.
that list just had so much variability in it. And, as I said, it was definitely a question of consistency. And, yeah, unlike last year, they managed to stitch together any flaws. They didn't have any long runs like they did. Oh, I guess they still had like a 3 loss streak, but you know what I mean? As I said, I think almost all teams had like, I think it's true actually. I think I saw a stat saying that all teams had a 3 loss streak this year, which is rare. So,
Well, I can
um,
actually, if I just look at the ladder now, Carlton had a 3-game loss streak. Fremantle had a 4-game loss streak. Essendon had a 3-game loss streak. Melbourne had a 3-game loss streak. North Melbourne had a 3-game loss streak, and Richmond obviously had a lot of loss streaks.
yeah.
So yeah,
Um,
and then yeah, Sydney obviously I think had like out of their last 6 games, I think
Yeah.
3 of them were losses, 3 of them were wins. Something like that.
Brisbane were 0-5, weren't
Yeah, they
they?
started.
Or
Hawthorn started 0-5. Brisbane,
oh,
I think,
Hawthorn
were
was
1 and
0-5. I
I
think
think
Brisbane were
Hawthorn
1 and
were sorry. Brisbane were 1-5. I think they were 1-5,
yeah.
but Hawthorn were 0-5. So yeah, there's definitely been patches for pretty much every team.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
But yeah, so
yeah.
GWS.
GWS, which you
Oh,
accurately
they're fairly
predicted.
bullish. Yeah, I put third to 8, finals lock, and put them fourth on the gut feel ladder, and they came fourth. So happy about that, I guess. Yeah, as I said, a lot of very nice tools at their disposal.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, their defense being one of them. They showed enough promise in the forward line to, I don't think it's weird because it's like, in a way, I thought they'd actually get a few more goals from their midfield. I didn't expect Hogan to lift as much as he did. A bit of a season out of nowhere, but sort of evened it out. As I said, Kelly and Cornelio not having quite as much forward impact gets replaced by Jesse Hogan winning the Brownlow.
Coleman,
Occasionally
not the
there was a
Brownlow.
few players. Yeah. So Brown, yeah, Coleman. Occasionally, Riccardi and even Callum Brown had a few games up forward, but yeah, as I said, Brent Daniels as well. Distributing. Toby Green was a bit quiet, but again, that sort of offset. So probably not the way I predicted it to happen. But in the way, I said I think we were confident there was just enough pieces. It's just where they get third to eighth was how well they work together.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I had them in a similar position. Let me find them here. Yeah, I had finished top 4. Again, there was still that little bit of variability as to how high they would finish or how low they would finish, but I thought top 4 was going to be pretty accurate alongside my Port Adelaide pick. Again, my issue that I had going into this was their forward line primarily because I thought their defense was great. Like Sam Taylor has been huge in their back line for most of the season.
Yeah.
In their midfield, again, their midfield is just completely stacked. Like both Greens, Whitfield, Kelly, Cornelio, like it's insane. Plus they have some up and coming players like James Peatling has been really good for them. And then of course they've had
Irishman, yeah.
Yeah. And then the guy with the one that's become famous because of the hat.
Bedford?
Not him, but Bedford as well, becoming the tag
Yeah.
player.
The forward line player. I think his name's like
I
Taylor.
cannot remember the name off the top of my head. I'm blanking on it right
It's
now.
actually very simple. Yeah.
But yeah, and they've also got Aaron Cadman as well, who's finally coming to his own.
Finally, he's only in the league 2 years.
Yeah, but he was a number 1 draft pick, but he's taken a couple of years to stand out massively.
Yeah,
but
it's fine.
Again, like I've never really rated players like Riccardi. I'll be honest. I still kind of don't. But I think that team has done enough to show that they are consistent, genuine threat now, and it's only going to be a matter of time until they get the premiership that they've been hunting for.
Yeah,
and who knows? It could be this season,
exactly.
but find out.
Yeah, it could be. Definitely top 4 gives you a lot better chance. We just finished the top 4, so all those teams you have to give any top. I think at any given year, you have to give the top 4 team at least double the chance of the next one of winning the premierships.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying you can't win it from outside, but it's just so much more likely. But yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I've also forgotten his fifth. I think it's Brisbane.
Yeah, yes, Brisbane. It is Brisbane. I'm looking at the ladder now. Brisbane at 5th position, which we were both not accurate on at all.
Yeah, well, it is my first lock that's broken. I told you all they were a top 4 lock. They were 1 under the lock. I think I put them first on the ladder.
You did.
They finished 5th.
I've put them at a top 2 finish. So we're both somewhat not accurate with this one.
Like, I'm a minor liar to you, but don't worry, there are far bigger lies that I spun to you to come. But yeah, as I said, I think we were all just a bit surprised at the start of their season. They had very poor midfield to forward line connection, which is the exact opposite to how Brisbane played.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously had a few major injuries to their back line, which all this season's just been, a bit not hit or miss, but all moving pieces. You know, obviously, Kitty Coleman goes down there. You got players like Starcevic and not Leicester, the other tall one, Gardner, I think.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
Gardner, Darcy Gardner.
Um, yeah, I think Gardner's out for the whole year.
Yeah, he did an ACL.
Leicester's missed a few
Kitty
games.
Coleman did an
Um,
ACL. They had a couple
yeah,
out with
exactly.
ACLs, which is rough.
Yeah, so yeah, for them to turn around, quite impressive. Made me like less of a liar after we thought they were going to miss the 8. I think I ruled them out once. I was obviously wrong.
Yeah, they were looking very
I
poor
don't think I was the only one.
before the first half finished.
Yeah, I think I said something of the lines of, you know, as I said, 1 in 5. They don't normally come back from the 8. I think they lost another one around about, I think to Hawthorn, and then I was like, yeah, no, it's going to be too hard from here. But they did make it, so props to them.
It's not a
Quite
double chance,
convincingly
but it's
too.
still a home final.
Yeah, exactly. Going to be very tough to beat at the Gabba. And then, you know, as I said, it's just 3 games in a row. It's not beyond them. But again, very hard. But absolutely fantastic to get it back. You know, as I said, that forward to mid connection, players like Lockie Neal. We saw Cam Rayner be absolutely fantastic in passing the middle game. Players like Zorko, you know, holding stead. So, yeah, fantastic for them.
Absolutely. All right, next on the list is the Western Bulldogs, which I think we both kind of predicted that they would have kind of average season this year. Not necessarily top
Yeah,
8, but not necessarily bottom 8 either.
again, it's one of those ones where I put a range from 6th to 10th for them, but I put them on my like gut ladder as 10th. I just thought it would be a bit of a down season for them, which again, it was looking like to be. Like they had a tough schedule, they lost a bit of the back line. They were looking to be one of the teams that just faded out of finals contention, but props to them. I think it was after the Port loss that I thought this, but
Yeah, that
yeah, as
seems
I
about
said,
right.
yeah, pretty great back half of the year to be honest. I think the only blemish being a loss to some middle rank and file team, but
Yeah, I can't
um,
remember who it is, but
yeah, no, it's Adelaide. Sorry, Adelaide. Yeah, um, yeah. So yeah, exactly. A very variable team. You know, as I said, when they do get when they do get their game going, they're very bullying, dominant disposals, and they're feeding like a Jamari Ugle-Hagan, the Norton, Luke Darcy forward line. So it's very dangerous, and their back line's gone from pretty mediocre to solid one-on-one defending. I will say it's not quite a top tier defense, even though they haven't conceded as many points. It's just so variable. You know, their losses compared to their wins, you know, they win by a million and then they lose by a million. So yeah, now the Bulldogs, yeah, variable. I don't trust them winning 4 games in a row, but
it is doable. They've done it before.
it would be a Bulldogs things to do that.
It
So
really would.
I definitely got that thing about them. But yeah, I said if they do lose, they're going to lose by like 40 points.
Yeah. Yeah, it's either
I don't know
they
when.
win
I
and
just
go
feel
all the
like it's going to
way,
happen.
or they lose massively. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I
My
feel
range for them was 5th to 10th, so I did somewhat accurately predict that they would make top 8. However, I predict lower to 10th because again, we didn't really trust them entirely. We thought maybe that this wasn't going to be another year for them, and they would have to wait another year for an actual finals bout.
yeah,
Fortunately for them, they have made it, and they've looked damn good making it. So
yeah.
it's a wait and see for this week as to whether they will make the miracle run once more, or they will lose to a Hawthorn team that is young and hungry.
Yeah, because I was going to say the next team didn't exactly have it all together at the start of the season.
Yeah, may as well talk about them now. Let's go to Hawthorn.
But yeah, as I said, what a turnaround. So again, the biggest lie I told you in the preseason
is that
was
they were going to
Hawthorn
be one of
15
the
to
bottom
18,
4 teams.
bottom 4 lock.
I knew it was a lie.
Underestimated by about 8 spots. I think I put them second last.
You put them 17th, yes.
Yeah, I put them 17th, so whoops. I didn't rate their team composition. I couldn't see how they would put a play style that was sustainable with a lot of their young kids. They were chipping the ball around too much. They didn't quite seem skilled enough to take it off. It's a common trap for some young teams. And they did look a bit like that from the start. As I said, when it was Kangaroos versus Hawthorn in about round 6, I think it was.
That was
it
the
looked like it was a
spoonball at the
spoonball.
time.
Yeah, but as I said, they had that solid draw against the Western. No, sorry, no, it was a draw or win. It was a draw or win
I don't know.
against
There was a
Western
few
Bulldogs
teams that
or
drew this
Brisbane.
season.
Yeah, I know. I think it was a draw against. No, they didn't.
They were against Collingwood or against Freo, I think.
No. They finished without a draw.
Okay.
But I think they had like a shock win against the Bulldogs, and then that loss to Port, which was such a miracle that Port even won that match. The last kick by Darcy Byrne-Jones in 30 seconds left after trailing for much of the game, and then they just never looked back. I think I said at some point after about 4 or 5 wins, I thought, this is like a different team. You've got to judge them differently. And I was afraid again when I said that they'll just turn a crap again. But no, they never look back. So solid on Sam Mitchell. Again, their transition is so beautiful. Players like Josh Weddle, Warpedo,
Will Day, when he's not been injured.
Will Day, exactly. To going to players like Moore. Even their forward line is a bit young and makeshift, Well, not makeshift, sorry. Obviously, they had to plan when they lost Mitch Lewis, who was going to start in centre. Carl Shadia started off a bit shaky, but ended up going great as the season presented on. When he couldn't mark it, it went to Ginnivan and Nick Watson, who again, as the season went on, went pretty good. And yeah, as I said, just all-round solid team.
And to their credit,
Sicily again. Fantastic in the back line.
Yeah, absolutely. Sicily, Massimo D'Ambrosio, one of the best pickups in the off-season for them.
Again, yeah.
But to their credit, they made the most of Mabior Chol, which is something that Richmond and the Gold Coast Suns could not get out of him. He's definitely improved in terms of his individual performances at Hawthorn. I think it's probably because it's a group that he seems to just gel with a lot better in terms of personalities. And also the fact that he's not anywhere near Damien Hardwick, that probably helps. But yeah, I'll talk about mine. So I put them 10th to 15th. I also wasn't expecting them to make top 8, but I expected a lot more out of them than Cyril did, clearly. Again, I didn't think that this team would have been capable of at least making top 8 this season, but I thought they had the makings of it. They had good pieces as whether they were going to gel together, and clearly it has, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking about them so highly. Sorry. And then just what they've been able to show, not just in the win streak, the massive win streak that they've had, but just everyone's been popping off. Like, they haven't really had a player that's always, well, clearly they have, because players come in and out all the time, but like, it's never really been a single player you can point out to say you've had a quiet game. Like, from an audience perspective, you can't really see it because they just gel super well together.
More well-rounded teams, yeah. No, absolutely.
And to their credit, that's the leadership of Sicily. Like, he's been the backbone of that entire team.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, I know it's so trendy to put like Coach of the Year, the underdog that's risen up, but in terms of just pure play style, I definitely think Sam Mitchell.
I think it has to go Sam Mitchell. I know earlier in the season we were definitely saying it probably should go to Horth, but you look at where Hawthorn has come from, it probably has to go to Sam Mitchell.
Yeah, exactly. But no, absolutely. For them to play like such a well-oiled machine, it's just one of the best-looking teams in terms of play style, I think, in the top 8. To be honest.
Yep, I completely agree. All right, now on to Carlton.
Rounding the top 8. Amazingly, I got this correct.
Somehow you got it correct.
Yeah, I predicted 5th to 10th. I thought their schedule was pretty hard. I thought they might struggle, considering, as I said, last year they were definitely a momentum team. But this year they looked a lot more consistent. And they're probably unlucky to finish 8th. They started off really well. But just a constant slate of injuries sort of held back finishing well with that horrid end of the season run for them, where they would win. Was it 1 out of 5?
Something like
Of their
that.
last games.
Well, again,
Um,
like this start of the season again, yeah, they had massive outs. Like they had no Silvani, they had no Walsh. I think Zach Williams was originally out as well, so they had like only half a midfield
Zach
to
Williams
start
had
with.
plenty of time off. Yeah, Adam Sard.
Yeah,
The list goes on. Yeah, as I said, their depth really helped this year. And I'm not saying like their depth players are overly that brilliant, but they always did enough until it just came a bit too
and
overwhelming.
to their ruck credit, Tom de Koning has looked massive. He's been so
Yeah,
important to their ruck work.
exactly. I said it's a bit of a shame that I don't think he's featuring this. I can't remember.
He's definitely not playing this week. I will
Yeah,
look at that shortly, actually, but I don't think he's playing this
yeah.
week.
Yeah, but absolutely. In terms of just, in terms of a year, I definitely think Carlton, probably, I think eighth is actually a bit under their performance. I've actually been very impressed with how good they've been in the face of adversity, yet in such a cutthroat year. As I said, it definitely did take them back a peg, and they'll be battling to get much past the first round of finals, let alone make a run this year, which is a bit of a shame. But Baggers fans, it does set up probably next couple of years, the final 2 years of Kerner and Mackay
Mm-hmm.
probably being prime together. Not saying they'll be too old, but as I said, injuries and all that sort of stuff tend to happen a bit more, especially someone like Kerner, who had that history. He's been very great the last few years, but you can't ignore that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully they can get a good run in the next couple of years.
Okay, so I did just quickly bring up Carlton's injury list. Tom de Koning, I'm not going to mention everyone because we will talk about that when we go through the fixture. But Tom de Koning, as of August 20th, is still at 2 to 3 weeks on his foot injury. So, judging by the time that has passed, he probably will still miss this week.
Yeah,
but if
first
Carlton make
round,
it through, should be available to play the week after.
Fingers crossed for Baggers. But
But we'll talk
we'll
about
talk
it in a minute.
later.
We probably
It's
don't
gonna be
expect you
tough.
guys to make it out of Brisbane. It's
No.
fine. Anyway,
All right. So we'll go to
Collingwood.
the outside the top 8. Collingwood.
Their premiership defense
again,
in shambles.
Yeah. Another one where I was a bit of a liar. I said first to fifth finals lock. Under -4 missed finals. That's what happened. Honestly, I thought I was being a bit pessimistic by extending a 1 to 4 to 1 to 5. I can't even remember why I put that. I think it was to do with Dan McStay going down.
Yeah, he went down really, really early.
Well, it was last year technically, but
there you go.
I said it was just, as I said, when you have an ACL injury that late, it affects next year as well. But yeah, I said I couldn't really predict their defense, especially that was so important to their finals run, being say hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
Their midfield was pretty good. A bit of that connection. I think their defensive work was bad earlier on, and they sort of fixed that up.
Getting Lockie Schultz out of Rio definitely helped.
Yeah, as I said, it's not exactly the impact that Collingwood would have wanted, but he still provided a lot of forward line pressure, and that's the thing I always respect about Schultz. When he's not having a great game, he'll still put a lot of tackles in the forward 50.
Mm-hmm.
He'll still put a lot of pressure on, as I said, it's how Collingwood play, so he still added to their structure, but you know what I mean? It's just like, people saying, I said the great team gets even greater, it didn't quite pan out that way. But yeah, I mean, look, they still had a good year. As I said, like, equivalent of 13 wins and missing the finals, it's pretty much he's never done before. So, but yeah, Collingwood, I don't think anyone's that upset that it was Collingwood to be the first team to do that, especially coming off a premiership. But, yeah, I said it was definitely all three lines were at times of the year a bit under what you would expect, especially from a premiership defense.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I want to quickly just touch back onto Carlton. I didn't mention where I put them. I said they'd finish 7th to 10th. So for the most part, I was pretty accurate. Again,
Yeah.
their injuries going into this season, and then just their overall performances of last season as well, kind of debated as to whether they would make top 8 or not. Obviously, they did. And then for Collingwood, I also put them top 4. Again, Premiership defense. You kind of expected them to play a lot better than what they did. So we're both wrong on that, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Now, shall we move on to the perennial bridesmaids of the league? Freo?
Yes, let's go to Fremantle. Where did you put
Yeah.
them? You had them outside the 8,
9 to
which
15.
is
Yeah, I
fairly
did.
accurate.
Just a couple of spots lower on my gut feel ladder. Again, depth was the biggest thing to me. I think the way they performed, considering their depth, was very good. So I still have the range right, because I did think, they were very capable. But again, 9th is probably underselling it for how just outside the top 8 they were. So you could argue that I got it wrong there. They were definitely top 8 capable. But yeah, as we found out, a lot of the things that were keeping them from the 8th were a lot of the minor things. So, it's hard to tell whether this was best case scenario or not. Freo fans would probably a bit either way on that. But yeah, as I said, fantastic midfield, fantastic defense, and a forward line that just unexpectedly gotten better by Josh Tracy having a standout year.
Absolutely, especially when youngster Jai Amos went missing. Tracy managed to stand up when it was very important to. Obviously, you've got the massive depth of that midfield with Hayden Young, Brayshaw, Sarong, all standing up when they needed to. Nat 5 moving into a different role, which became more of a tagging role, which was surprisingly
they didn't even see
more beneficial.
They didn't even see Will Brodie this year. That's how firing they were going. He's definitely a bit above playing reserve levels. I've had an eye on him in Peel. He's still playing all right, but as I said, it's just it's a hard team to crack into in terms of that.
Especially that midfield. It's really hard to break into. And then obviously, the back line. Obviously, we have to mention Luke Ryan. Some made all Australian. And we've got Alex Pearce as well, who unfortunately due to injury wasn't featured as often. But we thought we both thought had a really good season overall.
Yeah, John Clark as well off halfback.
Absolutely,
he was the best distributor. And yeah, I said they had some young talent that were around that probably had better years than they would expect. Players like Warner, Draper.
Draper
a bit
as well.
hit or miss, but for he was essentially taking really good defenders week in, week out. I thought he was pretty good in his first year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I was pretty accurate in where I think they would have ended up. I said they would finish 9th to 13th, so pretty much right in the middle is where I got them.
Yeah.
Again, we were both very impressed with the fact that they managed to fight for top 8 for a long time. It's just unfortunate that end of the season kind of ended the way that it did. But they definitely have the makings of a team to play top 8. 100%.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Whether they're able to just kind of solidify that next season, that remains to be seen, obviously. But, as crazy as this season was, who knows what next season will hold.
Yeah. All right.
Essendon. The Essendon Edge.
Yeah, well, look, again, and we're both sort of the same on this. Technically, I had them in the range. I did say that their best was 10th. And but yeah, I said 10th to 15th. I placed them 15th. Again, I definitely didn't quite believe in their list.
No, I definitely
what
didn't
I saw
either.
last year was sort of a fragmented team that sort of found their identity. Obviously, I think it just felt not that sustainable, especially when you looked at their higher end talent. Obviously getting Ben Mackay was an absolute gain for them, but their defense was held back partially by injuries and partially just by never being quite the best side in terms of that prospect. Again, their midfield, it was equal parts impressive, but equal parts still concerning that it's so merit centric.
Because they had great players, but they would all kind of just focus on giving everything the merit and make merit do everything, which is not really how you want a midfield to structure.
Yes and no, because as I said, I actually think their midfield overall productivity was still pretty good when you look at it. But again, it's hard to know exactly what the team would be like without merit, and I think most Essendon fans wouldn't want that thought even crossing
Absolutely
their
not.
mind. And yeah, their forward line I think was probably the most variable. At times they were a pressure forward team that can lock the ball, just outmuscle opponents by forcing entries and keeping them in. But at other times were just wasteful, lethargic, couldn't get it going, relied a lot on outside help to generate scores.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I said even their best, like Stringer and Langford both had good years on numbers, but in terms of game by game, you know what I mean? It's just there was some where they just needed more from them, and they would seem to disappear at the same times, which is pretty upsetting when you're only a couple of games outside the eighth. So
Yeah, absolutely. I also put my range in 10th to 15th, so we're both fairly accurate as to where we thought they would end up. Again, like they definitely have the makings of a team that could play for top 8, but they definitely don't have the consistency to be able to play the top 8, especially in that forward line.
yeah, for sure. As I said, a bit disappointing,
And
but in
like
terms of where we're
and like they
expecting them,
also had
yeah,
like
you take it.
massive pickups. Like they got Xavier Dersma last season. They picked up Jay Gresham
Yeah,
and Ben Mackay this season. They've had young players like Archie Perkins and Nate Caddy step up. So they
yeah.
have good signs. It's just about finding that
Yeah,
consistency.
optimistic is as I said, they're probably 1 year ahead of where I thought development is, but I said it is a bit concerning, especially for Essendon fans, as we know. Like some of their problems is just stuff that they've had for years, and they'll probably be a bit sick of it by now. But
Mm.
I still think it's like growth heading out of that area. It's just I don't think Essendon fans are that faithful, but they're going to want to need it sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next on the list is St Kilda, which is a very interesting
Yeah,
team because we both thought, well, preseason us thought they would be pretty much where they ended up. But as the season went
yeah.
on, we thought they would end up bottom four. They were bottom four for a while. Then, the last 4 weeks, they managed to punch back up. It
Yeah.
was a wild ride for them.
Yeah, because like technically I put them as 7th to 11th, so they're technically underperformed to where I'd rate them. Obviously I didn't rate the mesh of the pickups, but considering where they were last year, I just thought they would bring it together somehow. But at the start of the season was some of the most abysmal borderline football you could see in a team. Like it was just dreadful, pain to watch. And then, a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be so concerning. It's like, I won't say it's like the Patrick Ewing effect. For those who don't know, it's the theory that the New York Knicks were better without Patrick Ewing than with, because they had a better win-loss record. But it was sort of the case with Max King this year, where they just look better without him, trying to find better avenues of goals. And while I don't think they should be delisting Max King come the end of the year,
No, absolutely
I
not.
think Ross Lyon should say, look, we've probably gone a bit too focused on forward structure, especially for a young kid battling on his own. Take this to say, lower your eyes, help him out as much as you can. But, when he has a good lead, honor him up. So yeah, hopefully they can find some sort of consistency there because you don't want to see that forward half Saints. Like it was terrible.
Absolutely.
Watchability wise, I mean, there's still signs of a okay team. They weirdly did have some okay movement from halfback, like Nazar Wingard and Milera, Sinclair, who we've mentioned before.
Jack Steele as well when he had to
Solid.
push back. Cal Wilkie.
Yeah, Cal Wilkie as defenders with
Zach Jones.
Zach Jones.
They've had some very, very important like very, very good
uh,
quality players stand up when they've needed
yeah,
to.
yeah. Or is it Zach Jones? I don't know. The one that used to be a defender.
Zach Jones, I think, has gone back into defense for the most part. I know
I
he
think
definitely does
but
push
anyway, it
forward,
doesn't matter.
but he's kind of like a rotating player.
Yeah.
Cal Wilkie's
No,
predominantly a
Zane
defender, though.
I'm thinking of. Injured now, but he was very good at the start of the year. Sort of went under the
That's
radar.
true. My range, I put them 6th to 10th because I thought they would actually play for finals again, as they did last season, even though they got knocked out straight away. Fortunately, they didn't, and they fell out of my range completely. But again, there are positive signs, especially those last 3 weeks. They're able to at least carry that sort of good vibes and good learning experiences, hopefully into next season. I don't know what they're doing in terms of trade period or draft. We will obviously look at that in the coming weeks as well.
Yeah. They'll have moves.
They definitely have to have moves. But we shall see. Because again, like they have some really, really good signs. Like players like Cooper Sharman, Jack Higgins, they stepped up massively in the forward line.
Yeah.
Same
Matt
with
Filippo at the end of the year.
Yeah. Tim Membry as well. Again, all without Max King, these players managed to stand up when they've needed to. And obviously, we talked about
Mason Wood, even
Mason
as
Wood,
makeshift
yes.
forward. Yeah.
And then obviously, you got your Sinclairs and your Steels, which have been really cool to watch. And obviously Zach Jones and Cal Wilkie as well. And then it's just cultivating some of that younger talent they still have, like Wanganeen Miller, who has had some good signs, but is still a little inconsistent in his performance. Brad Hill, he's getting on in years, but he's also he's still doing the best that he can. But the game's definitely starting to catch up to him.
Yeah. I will say, like, St Kilda, it's a bit like West Coast. Like, I think their defense, like, they get some turnovers as a halfback, but when you're up the field so mediocre, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's just more up the field.
Back line can only do so much.
Yeah.
All right, next on the list is the Gold Coast Suns, which we both expected them to end up where they ended up.
12th to 15th. I put them as 13th. That's where we're at, aren't we?
Yep, 13th, which is exactly where they finished.
So I got that correct. So that was nice. I'm surprised how many I actually got correct. I got 9 correct ranges.
You don't get the next one
so
correct.
So a few of those are bang up. No. But as I said, Suns, I mean, they're almost predictable to a fault. Start the year good, get a few hopes up, and then peter out. Like, it's what we've seen from the Suns year in, year out. It's unlike other seasons. I think it's still a part of growth. Like, I still don't understand how people had faith in the 2019-2020 versions of the Suns.
No,
they came out from one of the worst list management, I think, of the modern era. And they seem to be recovering from that. Again, Dimmer as coach, first year, I still think it's a bit of a pass. I think it's hard to tell whether the system's actually improved, but they definitely did look a bit more.
Well, what hurt them the most is that they just couldn't win away from home. And it wasn't necessarily a list issue; it was just a consistency issue.
I think it goes back to a list issue, like
probably. But you look at their performances at home, and then you just look at how they travel. And for the most part, they were losing by massive margins.
Yeah. Like, it's just, to me, a list that doesn't seem comfortable. And look, they had one of the easiest draws in football. Like, and they still finished.
Well, they're the AFL's golden pet. Of course they're going to have an easy draw.
Wow. They're the, please survive before we bring in Tasmania so we don't look as bad.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, but yeah, as I said, honestly, look, I don't want to be too negative on them because despite all this, again, that young core you can see going forward. Again, Sam Collins probably should have been an All-Australian year. Matt Rao, absolute leader of the club, played a fantastic year. Ben King and Ben Long did their work in the forward line. I think they've got still forward line issues. They're very incohesive up there.
When Jared Witts wasn't out injured, I thought he had a really good season as a ruck.
Yeah, that too. And look, as I said, like, as much as I think they do chip a few uncontested disposals, there's no doubt that Sam Flanders and Noah Anderson are 2 absolute jets.
Absolutely.
I still put them as an A player this year, both of them. Probably Flanders a bit ahead, but they're definitely amongst their best and should poll high in the best of fairest for their Suns.
I wouldn't be surprised if their top 5 literally had Rao, Flanders, and Anderson all in it. Because I kind of expect that. For my range, I put them 12th to 18th because, again, neither of us expected them to play finals. Again, it was also Dimmer's first year as their coach. Like, you don't expect a first year coach to immediately put them into top 8, especially if they're already a middling team. So again, we'll talk about this later on, but also like you want to hope that going into next season they'll at least try and punch top 10, maybe on the cusp of a top 8 spot, but definitely hopefully better than this season.
Yeah. The good thing is they've got maybe a few people interested. We'll talk about it a bit more in the trade period, but as said, if they can at least bolster up their list a bit, yeah, they should be roundabouts.
Well, having, a 3-time premiership coach probably does help, but it's also like it's not just the head coach that makes the difference. It's also the assistant coaches around him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Next on the list is Melbourne, which neither of us expected this.
No, I put them as finals lock. Look, we were a bit skeptical with all the news about Oliver coming out earlier in the season. I think that was really it. I think also going straight sets out in finals, they look to be maybe not coming unglued, but you know what I mean? Like lacking that cohesive core you would expect out of a still premiership.
For the most part, it was pretty much still their premiership midfield.
Yeah, exactly. And, they still made finals, but yeah, they just didn't hold it together. They started off really well. They had a few backline injuries. They were looking okay. And then they just sort of fell off the planet between the middle and picked up a bit and then just fell off at the end. So I had them 3rd to 7th as a final lock. Another lock that was lied. Missed the range by 7, which again for a range is pretty awful because you want you say it's like 7 spots worse than what I could see was the worst possible outcome. Yeah, sorry Melbourne fans, I think that was the worst in terms of missing it that way.
I to be fair, I also had them locked into top 8, so the egg on my face as well.
Yeah, exactly. And as we said, like it was really the forward line and midfield. Once their midfield started waning off, the forward line just, I don't know what I was I was gonna say Sean, but it's anti-Sean. They sucked in all light and hope and destroyed it for the Demons. I'm not gonna call out their players, because they're always had that issue. It's just that was just mitigated by the fact that they were able to pump the ball in there so much.
Yeah.
Obviously a few players played probably under what you would hope.
I think there was at least one player in their forward line that played above their expectations, and that was Daniel Turner.
Yeah, again, I think he was a bit too late in the season for that to like really be.
Oh no, I do agree on that. He didn't come in until later on, but he definitely.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. It's just like, yeah, as I said, like it definitely didn't have an impact on the season, but it's something they can hope for next year. But players like Fritsch, even Cosy Pickett was very up and down in the forward line. In the midfield, obviously Oliver. Sorry, what was that?
Van Rooyen.
Van Rooyen, I think he started off a bit slow, but I think he was a bit respectable towards the end. Especially for what's essentially a second-year player, but definitely not the heights of last season.
Yeah.
And yeah, their backline wasn't bad, but they lost a few pieces here and there, and yeah, so
they had a lot of mix and matching with both May and Lever going out repeatedly.
Yeah, exactly, and when that's just such a good part of your team structure, like the only good part of them, even maybe 6 rounds in, like that was the only bit that was good, and it was sort of the last thing to go for them, where they went just kind of very terribly.
Yeah, and then they went to Alice Springs that got absolutely decimated by Fremantle. That was kind of the sign where the end phase. Yeah, pretty much. But with the hope, this brief off-season drama of Christian Petrarca's 50-50 whether he stay, whether he goes, hasn't helped them either, I don't think. But he's committed to staying at least for the 2025 season. So hopefully it'll bring some sort of life back into them.
He's read a copy of Dust Capital. Thinks he can probably get if he gets a good trade to the team he wants, it will probably be better long term. So
Well, I would assume he
You know,
wants to stay in Victoria, but it's
I would
like,
imagine so. Look, as I
who would?
said,
Well, granted, most teams would happily take him. He's one of the best midfielders in the comp.
yeah. But you think like a player leaving like this, as I said, I think Petrarca just has to have that ultra competitive mindset. I think he's the sort of player that goes to a contender. So yeah, as I said, he'll just wait for his time.
Mm.
Um,
And
but
if he's
maybe
gonna,
things change. Maybe Melbourne becomes a contender again.
well, I mean, who knows? If they introduce the mid-season trade period, he could just go straight then and there in the middle of the 2025 season.
Look, I don't trust clubs. I
No,
don't
neither
think
do
there
I.
should be a mid-season trade season
Neither do
because I
I.
think there's some. It'll sink some ships. I mean, look, as what if Hawthorn just decided, I mean, look, that's a conversation for another day, though. We got
Yeah,
to get
no,
through these.
we
But
got other
yeah,
stuff to talk about. Adelaide Crows, 15th position. That is not
yeah,
where either
another,
of us predicted them to be because, again, end of
yeah.
last season, they missed out on finals by a goal that should have been a goal. Everyone remembers
Mm.
it. It will always live on in infamy, especially now that specific goal became the reason why we now have the chips in the balls, which is being tested through the AFLW
Yeah,
season,
just
which
in
is
the
currently
AFLW.
running.
Just watch a match actually. It seemed to overturn the decision quite quickly. So hopefully that translates well for the rest. I only saw
Absolutely.
one incident, but
It's definitely going to keep an eye on. I know you're going to watch a lot of the AFLW this off season,
yeah,
but I'm going to try
exactly.
and keep an eye on a couple of games as well, just to see how the ball tech works and like
Yeah,
how it overall functions, because it's definitely something we've been needing. That and 4K quality cameras, please.
yes,
We give us better
please,
vision, please. I'm begging.
yes.
Um, but
But
yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
if
back on Adelaide.
yeah, 4K cameras probably wouldn't capture the entirety of the disappointment for Crows fans. I put them 6 to 10th. We say I'm 5 under. Oh, sorry, which is 5 above where they ended finish up in terms of like pessimistic. So again,
I also put them
it
6 to
was one of
10
those
just for
seasons
note.
just everything went sort of wrong for them. I put them 7th in the gut ranking. So look, they have the capabilities of 7th. There's no doubt. For a bottom 14, they're definitely so much better than most bottom
especially
14s.
as
But
especially towards the later half of the season when they got their pieces back that they were missing very badly, like Thilthorpe.
yeah, well, I was about to say, as I said, but a lot of that was due to them coming together at the end. But at the start was again some of the biggest turnaround from again a team becoming like a really fantastic offensive team to one that just couldn't get anything going in the forward line.
Mm.
Again, oh, what was it? The Phil Forbes second hand man. Fogarty.
Yes, that's
Fogarty
right.
took a while to get going. Phil Forbes wasn't there. They were experimenting. They tried Burgess, their recruit from Gold Coast, to little success. They tried a lot of things.
And obviously, Tex
But
was in and out as well.
yeah, he didn't quite have a as big a or longer season. But yeah, as I said, absolutely. And their midfield was pretty bad. Even when they had pretty much everyone available, it took a while to figure it out. Then when they figured it out, they got injured.
Yep.
So, as I said, yeah, they really couldn't get going till the end. Not overly, I don't think it was I don't think bottom 4 was, entirely their fault. But I think finishing, not coming near the finals was. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
I agree with
they
that
definitely
perspective.
should have played a bit better than they did, but also they got a bit unlucky.
Yeah, absolutely
But
agreed.
they've, again, huge upside was just how well they played that last 5 games, I'll say.
Not to mention the fact that we've
Of
been
the
very impressed with their defense work. Like that we're very, very
yes,
impressed with their
yes.
backline in its entirety.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Like, there was so much under siege. But and they even had a few injury rotations. It wasn't like they weren't affected. But the combination of Keane, Worrell, Butts, probably another one that I'm
There
forgetting.
is another one that I'm
Um,
forgetting.
oh, Nick Murray, who
That's
came
right.
back late. Even Michael Annie, I don't think he was there. For the whole season.
Well, he's was named in the 22 under 23, so he definitely stood out enough. but I think he had more.
Yeah, I'm talking about games played.
Yeah. No, I don't think he played as. I don't think he was as consistent of a presence in that backline.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as I said, yeah, uh, yeah, just disappointing in the end. But definitely, I would expect a rise up next year. But again, we've got an off season to temper our expectations. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see if we continue to go that. But I think probably you and I could both agree we probably see a rise from them next year. But
Absolutely, they
you
have the
know,
list for it. It's just whether, well, now that they know that they know, especially for that midfield, the pieces that they want to use and where they want to go. It's just about
yeah,
solidifying their cohesiveness and ensuring that their forward line is a little bit more consistent as well.
yeah, exactly.
All right, next is the West Coast Eagles, and I'm pretty sure we both kind of predicted them to be down here in the bottom four, which
Yeah,
we
I
did.
think yeah.
Although
Yeah,
neither of us
bottom
predicted
four
them to
lock.
be 16th.
15th to 18th. Yeah. Um, honestly, the good news is it wasn't as wide a gap from like an AFL standard team as last year was.
Mm-hmm.
Last year was obviously injury affected. This year still was, but it wasn't nearly as bad. I would say it's still a regular season's worth of injury list.
Yeah, I agree.
It was if you compare it amongst all teams, it would be like, maybe 10th, I would say, in terms of injuries. I haven't studied enough to back up that claim, but that's just a gut feel.
But obviously, they had major notable outs for a long time, like Elliot Yeo, Oscar Allen being like the key to.
Oh, last year,
No,
yeah.
I mean for the start of this season.
Yeah, it wasn't out for that long.
I mean,
It was
it was
mainly
enough to make an
Allen.
impact.
Maybe. Yeah, I would say, again, the biggest upside was,
Harley Reid.
I would say it's weird, half of the kids. Because obviously, you have players like Ollie Reid, Brady Hoff playing really well, and even, whichever Edwards plays in defense, stood up a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
The other one might be delisted. As I said, I'll say the other side is, the kids that probably aren't going to make it, your Harry, Edwards, or Luke, whichever
One of
one's
the
not as
two.
good. Yeah, just don't delist the wrong one, okay? Otherwise, you're really on the back foot. Players like Tyler Brockman are
Mm-hmm.
not panning out. As I said, maybe, again, I thought he was going to come good, but Zane True again sort of dropped off again when I thought he might make a bit more of an impact. But yeah, as I said, yeah, like they just got to work out which kids are going to last this transition period. And then, 1, maybe 2 years of that, they'll lose a few years of experience, but, they'll have that new core to which they'll probably be looking at stuff like free agency to maybe push back into the 8, but they're still a couple of years away,
Absolutely.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their list now. Like you expect over the next 2 years, probably like you expect Yo and McGovern to probably retire. So that's gonna be like two very important pieces that they're gonna miss out.
Yeah.
You'd like to hope
Almost certainly
Tim Kelly as well, probably. Barras is going to
Yeah.
Hawthorn, so that's
one of the more confirmed-ish off-season moves. Yeah.
yes. But yeah, they're gonna lose a lot over the next couple of years. So you want to hope that it's like for them, it's okay if you're still bottom to middle of the pack, but as long as you start seeing some slow improvement and getting experience into these young players that you want to cultivate.
I think the biggest worry for them is they're like one injury away from their defense going to, like, let's face it, 2024 North Melbourne bad.
Oh yeah, true.
Yeah. So, but anyway,
speaking
do you
of,
want to talk about North now, or is there anything else?
Speaking of, may as well. No, there's not really much to talk about with West Coast. It's like it's been cool to see the rise of Jake Waterman. And hopefully him and Oscar Allen can find a bit more cohesiveness up forward. Obviously, we want to see some more consistency out of Harley Reid. Obviously, he's still young.
Yeah.
But definitely him and Elliot Yeo and Tim Kelly are going to be like key pieces in that midfield up until one of them retires. So if they're able to get a little bit more cohesiveness, at least during the off season, build a bit more, team, do some more like stronger teamwork sort of building.
Yeah,
should be able to put some more trust into that midfield.
I will say it's like so important for them to steady the ship while they're in this transition because, yeah, as I said, it's a multi-year project. But one of the best things this year was just the quality of wins that they were able to get. Wins against Freo, Melbourne,
Richmond.
I think there was one other that was a slight upset, but yeah. Oh, look, they didn't win much. So maybe it was just Freo, Melbourne, but the fact that they didn't just pick off bottom four teams, yeah, was good. Which unfortunately can't be said about North Melbourne.
No, unfortunately not. Granted, they still got 3 wins on the board, which is better than Richmond, which we'll talk about in a minute. But,
yeah.
We both
again,
still predicted them to be bottom 4.
Bottom 4 lock, yeah.
What we liked about them, because I did watch a lot more North games than you did, was one, Sherry, again, should have been all Australian.
Yeah,
and
good enough,
like they had some really good pieces in their midfield as the season went on, like LDU, Sheasel, Wardlaw, Core was really good as the season went on. And then obviously you've got some of the forward line pieces that worked really well, like Nick Clarkey, as we're always fans of.
Yes, another consistent year and a pretty underfed forward line.
No, that's for sure. But yeah, again, as we talked about in the in the preseason and going all the way through the seasons, that their back line was their weakest part.
Yeah, they didn't have the list to compete, and the list played as well as the list was. As you mentioned, Aiden Core is not the person you want to bring in to replace Ben Mackay.
No,
like, there's a few
losses.
What is it? Yeah, there's a few differences in win percentage if there was such a stat. But yeah, as I said, it's
Words
just
are hard.
not much you can say. Like, they were playing people like Toby Pink and all that sort of, I don't want to like put him out, but like that's sort of the player that you're like, yeah, that doesn't look like an AFL standard player.
He's gone from the rookie draft. For the back line. Like, he probably fits better in a different position, but they had to make do.
Yeah, maybe. But you know what I mean? Like, that's just sort of the player that will be like, no one expected much and it didn't deliver much. But, say Charlie Comburn, was probably their shining light down there in terms of future hope as well. Again, Aiden Core and Griffin Lake should at least be a bit more serviceable if they can get a bit of consistency back there. One of your players, the hyphen, Callum
Coleman Jones. Unfortunately, he went out in the preseason with an ACL.
Yeah, hopefully he comes back.
That hurt them. Because he was playing. He's playing ruck. He's primarily a ruck forward, so he was their ruck before Sherry started making a name for himself.
Yeah, well, I said more forward ruck sort of thing, but I said even playing like they would have experimented with him down back. So, I said nothing really went going for them there, but I think as I said. Look, they didn't have any meaningful wins, really. As I said, all of them were near bottom 4 team, highest being the Gold Coast. But, as I said, it's not last.
No.
There are signs. It's just a bit of a shame that they're going to be pretty much confirmed, I would say, of having a half decade of really miserable football.
Yeah, again,
being 2020 to 2025.
If you compare them to West Coast have a much greater upside over the next 2 years than North Melbourne currently
over the next 2, yeah. Like I said, they've got more chance of stabilizing, whereas the North Melbourne just need both a coaching and list redevelopment. Like, I'm not going to say Alistair Clarkson can't take them anywhere, but I don't even think he showed enough to where they were able to find a way to win with what they had. And you can blame that on list management as well, but I think it was a bit disappointing. That they said they had a few chances of winning that let slip as well. So, it's just another year for North fans.
Yeah, it's the cycle of misery for North Melbourne, and that'll go for a while. Speaking of the cycle of misery, ours has just started. Let's talk about Richmond.
Yeah, Richmond. Look, injury pain. That's all I gotta say.
Again, we both didn't expect them bottom 4, let alone 18.
Transitioning. Yeah, I put 11th to 16th. Obviously, that means I'm out of my range by 2. I think I put them just above the bottom 4.
You did. You put them at 14th. 14th. My range was 8th to 13th because I thought with our list we had a chance of making a possible finals push, but it wasn't definitely not guaranteed. It was like a 10% chance in my head.
Yeah,
But I wasn't expecting
getcha.
I was expecting us to kind of be consistent middle of the pack. Again,
It's not like St Kilda.
no one saw the injury list happen. No one saw that
No.
coming. So there wasn't, who knows what could have been if we didn't run into all these injuries.
Yeah, like it was still bad at the start of the year, but it so quickly spiraled out of control.
Yeah. To our upside, even though the upside players also got injured, we had some great shining lights throughout the season. Mikelty Lafau is a great one. Tom Brown, Judson Clark, Steely Green,
Hugo
Ralphsmith, one of my favorite players at the moment. We also had some of our, we also had Taranto and Hopper have a lot more prominent season compared to last season, especially Taranto. Especially Hopper, because Hopper was injured a little bit more last season.
And when he remembered his hamstring, Prestia played all right for some of the veterans.
Especially the last couple of weeks of the season. Prestia looked like he was in premiership form.
Yeah.
And he signed on for one more season. So
yeah, played 5-6 games this year.
He played a couple of games early on. Then took another big break. And then another couple of games, and then another break. And I think he played the last 4 or 5 weeks off the top of my head. And he's been in really good form. So I'm very impressed with him, and I'm glad that he signed on for another year. Because especially during the middle of the season, I thought he should have retired because of all of his soft tissue injuries. But if he's able to stay fit and keep his hamstrings together, I think he could. He's very much our best midfielder right now. Like, kind of no doubt about that.
Yeah, depending on if you want to call Tank a midfielder, but I get you.
Well, I consider him a ruck, not necessarily a midfielder.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Again, and you look at our backline too. Like, if we didn't have all of these injuries, I could easily put our backline as like a top 8 backline. But the injuries just completely shattered it, and there was nothing we could do.
Yeah, it's just so hard to judge it this year because again, they're the worst defense technically in the team, but they're just not.
We never had a consistent six.
Exactly.
But and again, we'll talk about this later in the off season. But look at the pieces. If they're all fit, it's a pretty strong backline.
Still young, but definitely a bit more formulated than what they had to put out. So
absolutely. There's not really much more else that we can say about that. Again, injuries. Again, new coaches as well. So changing game style didn't help a little bit.
Yeah, I was about to say, I actually think Tuesday had a decent approach to this year, considering how bad it was.
Yeah, because you go
to a new team, you want to put some things in place, and all of a sudden you get nothing.
Well, I mean, you look at, as we mentioned throughout the season, we played pretty close to almost all the top 8 teams. We just couldn't keep up in the end.
I think it would have been, if you compare floggings, I think Richmond would be under West Coast and North Melbourne. I think there'd probably be 5 floggings to about 10. It's just, some of the floggings were just so bad because eventually the damn wall broke.
Yeah, because you look at the first half, or at least the first 3 quarters of a game, especially against the good teams, and we managed to keep up for the most part. And then it's just the wall broke in the 4th. And it's when they got way up to 30, 40 points.
It was literally running out of gas. But I said, if I was giving a letter grade, I'd definitely put Richmond above. I would even put them above West Coast, to be honest. Again, I think that, and again, this is a letter grade with both context and actual position. Yeah. So, even optimistically, I think you could actually put Richmond a bit above that. But even with how they performed this season, I would still actually put them above West Coast and North Melbourne because, they at least have consistency, and that's something hard to do when A, you got that so many injuries, and B, while you're dealing with the transitioning list. So.
Yeah, and it's only going to keep getting more and more strange for our transition period because this off season is probably going to be the busiest we've had in a while.
Yeah, but again, we'll talk about that a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to hop on to the finals?
We do. Let's take a look at the official fixture for the first finals games of the season. So first up, we have the it's technically dubbed the second qualifying final, but it's Port
Mm.
Adelaide and Geelong at the Adelaide Oval.
Yes, 3 days away. One by the time you're listening to this, dear viewers. And yeah, absolutely keen for it.
Well,
Um,
we ideally we want to take a look at teams, but we can't exactly do that right now because nothing's been fully confirmed. However, we can judge off
yeah,
of injury lists and suspensions, i.e., Dan Houston. Uh,
yeah.
that we can
Well,
kind of make it an adjudicated guess as to where how we expect this game to kind of end up.
yeah. Well, again, the biggest thing for Port Adelaide is probably either putting Charlie Dixon or Todd Marshall back into the side. One of those will come off. Obviously, Dante Vicentini, who was a laid-in for Dixon in round 24, I would almost guarantee won't see the first week of finals. As I said, not knocking him, but he's, fledgling ruckman that wasn't even meant to play forward last week.
Mm.
Yeah. And the other one, obviously, being the unfortunate rest of season loss of
Dan
Kane
Houston.
Farrell.
Oh, Kane Farrell as well. Sorry.
No, Kane Farrell's out for the season.
That's right. He
Unfortunately,
did the
this
injury.
list is a bit outdated. So we're missing both our halfbackers. Yeah, we might play Josh Sin or Brian Burton. Yeah, the former Hawthorn player.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Depending on how we feel, Burton was okay in his match. He was in the side. He replaced Houston initially. Whether we continue that or juggle around a bit, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, it's much the same of probably what you saw from the Fremantle team. Touch wood, nothing else happens. So yeah, and as for Geelong,
Tom
I don't think they'll
Hawkins
be
is still
missing.
trying to make it into the side. No one's really
Yeah,
expecting it to happen because I think Shannon Neal's been
no,
too consistent, and you don't really want to take out the Neal Cameron forward line duo at the moment because they've been gelling really well. Again, like you've also still got Sam DeConing, who I think is
yeah,
still
he'll
in.
be back.
You've got Ollie Dempsey as
I think he
well.
played
You've got a
last
really
time,
consistent.
but
I can't remember.
yeah,
But if he's not injured, he should be in this week.
yeah,
And then obviously, their midfield is still really solid. Again, they're moving Tom Stewart back and forth between halfback and midfield time.
yeah.
Danger's been a little bit has been more consistent the past couple of weeks.
Well, by more consistent, he's going back to that brilliant form he was on at the start of the season.
Absolutely. And so
So
it's just about. I think Geelong's defense is maybe my only question, but it's only like a
yeah, especially 1-on-1.
yeah, especially against Port's forward
Again,
line. It's going to be very interesting.
yeah, if Marshall can kick straight, because I think Georgie for the finals, I would put at least an average of 2 goals. I'm pretty confident that he should take that on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, depending on how long they play, hopefully more than 2 games. But who knows? But yeah, as I said, they're definitely a bit vulnerable there. While on the flip side, as I said, Geelong have a slew of small forwards that will be absolutely fantastic. Port's lost, Houston and Farrell, who, despite obviously being known for their attack,
Mm-hmm.
are also just good outright small defenders. Definitely a step down, putting Burton or Sin or both on them. But at the same time, Port seem to have got that balance in the back line. Hopefully, I actually think it's a good matchup for Port, especially as you said with that midfield matchup. If Jordan Sweet can hold his own against Sam DeConing, that should be pretty well. But again, if they just also need to stay clean, going inside 50, because yeah, as I said, Tom Stewart, he'll try and get those early intercepts. Max Owen, he's a line breaker. If they get the ball to him and Port Adelaide's on the hop, he'll be inside 50 to that feast of a forward line. So I think that's actually the most interesting thing. I think Port Adelaide's defense versus Geelong's attacking. Like, I don't know. I don't think you could pick a winner. One might outshine the other. Maybe it'll nullify, but yeah, it should be one of the best line matches in this round of finals, I would say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I also just briefly brought up the injury list for both teams as we're talking about them, and yeah, pretty much no everyone that's currently on the injury list is all pretty much out for the rest of the season, so they're not going to be picked anyway. Plus, add
Yeah.
Farrell onto this list and take out Todd Marshall and Georgiades and Lockie Jones because they're actually all because two of them played.
Yeah, Lucky Jones played last week, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
instead of Georgiades, so it's only Todd Marshall that
Yeah.
hasn't. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It'll also be interesting, yeah, if we play Rats or not. But again, I won't talk too much because you'll find out in the list not too long after this comes out.
yeah, exactly right. All right, let's move on to the next game, which is probably going to be technically they're all going to be like games to watch because they're all finals.
Yeah.
But this
Also, I
could be
should
the
ask
most.
you, who do you have for the Port Geelong? Because you know who I'm going to pick.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm leaning towards Port Adelaide purely because it's also at the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
And I think Port's midfield is slightly better than Geelong's.
Yeah.
But it's going to just be very dependent on your forward line versus their back line.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I'm kind of edging towards Port Adelaide, but it's very 50-50 for me at the moment.
Look, honestly, I don't think there's any match except one that's probably outside of 60-40 at the moment. So,
all right, let's move on to the game that I'm most looking forward to watch is the Western Bulldogs versus Hawthorn at the MCG.
mm-hmm.
Now this one is interesting, not just because they're two teams that are pretty much very neck and neck in terms of performances, but also the fact that it's at the MCG and not at Marvel, which favours Hawthorn more so than the Western Bulldogs. Granted, this is a contractual thing with the MCC, so it was unavoidable. But yeah, I think this could come down.
And the only Victorian football this week.
Yeah, it is because the only other Victorian teams are travelling interstate.
Yeah.
There is a game in pretty much every state except Perth this week.
Yeah.
It's just kind of crazy to think
WA.
about. Oh, well, because obviously we don't count Tasmania in this because no final ever gets played in Tasmania at the moment.
Barely a state.
It's not even a territory.
Yeah. No, I get it.
But yeah, this is the match to watch for me, just because of how close both these two teams are in terms of performance,
storyline,
in terms of work rate, in terms of literally everything, plus the storyline itself.
Yeah, as
miracle
I said,
runs from both teams.
Came back from nowhere to the Bulldogs that were just so up and down, but at the same time, so ruthless when they did get a hold of teams. Again, I think just the pure consistency of Hawthorn, and especially because Hawthorn transitioned so well, and the Bulldogs probably, when they're firing, their weakest bit is accuracy and inside 50 retention. So it's like one of those things where even if both teams are, firing, I think Hawthorn will have that edge. Midfield wise, it's going to be tough. Like Hawks midfield can definitely be overwhelmed, but I think this year they've actually done a good job of just minimizing that as much as possible. Like, you wouldn't take it on paper, but at the same time, I said they've always found passages of attack, and they've always, even if they're maybe not defending the center as well, they still find ways to score. So, yeah, that's why I'll probably put a tiny edge on Hawthorn, but who knows?
I've had a look at their injury lists. Obviously, Will Day, who's already been ruled out for this first final. If Hawthorn win, he might be available to play the week after. CJ, I believe, will be back if he wasn't playing last week. They're the only two notable ones. For
Ned Reeves.
Ned Reeves, 50-50. He's been fairly fringe recently, but I think CJ and Will Day are kind of the two most notable injury outs.
Yeah, as I said, it's like Ned Reeves is just like, you wouldn't expect him to be the second ruckman, but as I said, the form of Lloyd Meek is quite amazing.
Has been very impressive. And then I had a look at the doggies as well. Jason Johannesson is looking to possibly come back because I don't think he played last week. I think he was still out. Riley West as well is on track to possibly play this week as well.
Yeah.
And then obviously they played Team English last week. They've got pretty much any other notable players back that aren't ruled out for the rest of the season. So you look at their best 22 that we have available, and it's very neck and neck just right off the bat.
Honestly, with the way that Bulldogs are transitioning, does Johansson even come straight back in?
I don't think
I'm not even sure you
does.
mess with that.
Who do you take out?
Because I wouldn't take O'Donnell. I wouldn't take Freer. I wouldn't take maybe Caleb Daniel. Really, is the only one that
he's been very fringe this season. So Daniel might be the only option.
And to be honest,
and I don't really want to take out Lob. I'm going to be honest because I think Lob's been very important since been moving down there.
Oh, you wouldn't take out Lob for Johannesson anyway.
Oh no, well that's a hype.
I know what you mean,
but yeah,
as I said, Hawthorn you probably could play under's hype, but I don't think they will.
No.
But yeah, honestly, if I'm going to try and make room for one, I'd actually probably put in Riley West. As I said, I would imagine that would be the only one to come back in, but who knows? I think they had like a 2-gamer last week that they probably put out. I forgot his name.
I can't remember either, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Probably one change for the Bulldogs.
In terms of who I would pick, I don't know. Again, these are the two teams that I want to win the flag, so I don't know who I want to pick. Because it's at the MCG, I want to favour Hawthorn, and just because Hawthorn's kind of had my heart since they've gone on this win streak. But also I really like the doggies and how they currently look. I think they function really, really well. They're very much a well-oiled machine. Granted, they have minor issues. Obviously, otherwise they would be in the top 4 rather than like top 8.
Yeah.
I think it's not necessarily the consistency of the forward line. It's just because like they're great markers. They know how to give good leads. It's just about their inside 50 usage is whether it's going to be the big talking point.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, Bulldogs being quite inaccurate all year, much like Brisbane, and especially, with such a potent counter-attacking team. But, as I said, honestly, hard to tell.
I want to favour Hawthorn, especially because it's at the MCG. But the doggies know how to win finals games at the MCG.
Also, one thing we have neglected to mention, they dropped Buku Kamas last week, so he actually has to come back into the team as well.
Heck, I actually completely forgot about that.
Johannesson. Yeah, so as I said, at that point, you're either looking at dropping Dre or Bramble, which, again, I think maybe Dre's a bit more droppable, but, it's hard when they won so convincingly against the Giants to, want to, but...
that's going to be
That'll be interesting.
That's going to be a very hard.
You'll find out tomorrow. Again, you being the audience.
Yes, we will find out in a couple of days as I'm recording this. All right, let's move on to the Battle of the Bridge in the finals.
Yes, exactly.
Whilst the Doggies Hawthorn game is going to be probably the best one to watch, I think this is going to be the most hyped.
Yeah,
because this is huge for football in New South Wales.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sets up 3 weeks of Sydney football, because obviously the loser will get a home, essentially an elimination final.
Mm-hmm. And the winner will go straight into a prelim.
No, quarterfinals. Yeah, the other team will get a home prelim finals.
And if whoever the loser is wins that elimination final, that's 2 home finals in Sydney for prelims. Oh, no, sorry, it's not. No, actually,
because they'll face either Port or Geelong.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. Never mind. Ignore me.
Don't be trying to move a final.
Unless it's Sydney who loses.
Unless it's Geelong. Yeah, then Victoria can use one less final.
If it's Sydney who loses this, then they still get the home prelim. Because they finished first overall on the ladder. I'm pretty sure that's how that works.
No, it isn't.
I can't remember. I'm being silly, maybe.
No,
I'm too tired.
If you win it, you get the final.
No, that is correct. I'm too tired. I'm thinking. I'm overthinking this.
There are other leagues where that does change, but it's not AFL.
Anyway, this also could go either way. Granted, it's at the SCG, which does favour Sydney a lot more. But I think the Giants have shown that they can play at the SCG and play well. But it's going to be dependent on Sydney's forward line for the most part. That's where Sydney have most of their issues.
Honestly, I'm actually the opposite. I reckon it's their back line. I think Sydney can generate a lot more score from other areas. But their backline's been a bit suspect in this back half. And, as I said, they've got Rampy back, but he hasn't been playing as well. I think they've got McCartan back, and he just played averagely that last match. As I said, they'll be hoping, with a few players back that are recovered. Obviously, the big question is, do they get Tom Papley back straight away? Do they get McInerney back straight away?
Mm-hmm.
Or will they have to wait another week? Because obviously they will advance sometime. As I said, it's just, you're still right about that forward line. It's hard to see, like, even if they, Buckley and Sam Taylor,
yes,
with their form, because Giants, Sam Taylor was a bit out of it, but he's gone back really into form. They should have their hands quite. Sorry, Sydney's forward should have their hands quite tied up. It will be Sydney's midfield that will need to produce. So maybe even that Bedford tag may be one of the more important tags of the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, it's also some of the younger players that are going to stand up for GWS too, because they are still playing. A lot of youngsters, filling in those spots because again, they were a transition team not too long ago until they decided not to be. It wasn't really time that made that transition. It was just the will to play really good football. So, as I said, if players like Peatling, Lockie Ash should come back in.
Isaac Cumming and Jake Riccardi are both on track to return as well. Granted, I'm not a fan of Riccardi. I don't think he really offers that much to the GWS forward line other than just a tall body.
It's a bit harsh, but yeah, I think
I'm
he's
never been a big fan, but
up and down maybe. I'll give you that.
So it's the GWS backline that we both really love. Again, their midfield is also really good. In comparison to Sydney's midfield, that's a tough battle. Just right off the bat, that's a tough battle. You want to hope that Bedford is tagging the right player, whether that's Heaney, whether that's Goulden, whether it's Warner. And
don't forget, Callum Ward has been a very good runner this year, so I wouldn't be surprised if they just let Callum Ward and Errol Goulden not so much tag, but be responsible for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll make both defensive efforts each way. As I said, Darcy Jones is the forward that we're thinking of up forward.
That's right.
I knew it was fairly simple. Helmet, of course, as most people know him or recognize him. But as I said, honestly,
I want Giants to win, but I think Sydney are gonna take week one.
Yeah, it's very iffy because it's like it's one of the most flaky form teams of like the top four because as I said, the Giants have been just winning, but have that streak.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas as I said, Sydney were a lot more impressive at the start of the year. They've got defensive issues. I'm actually going to go the Giants for this one.
Yeah. I can see it. I think it's very 50-50 either way. I think just purely because it's at the SCG, I'm just slightly going to outfavour Sydney.
Yeah, absolutely. And shall we wrap it up with what I think is probably
the blowout?
I wouldn't say blowout.
I hate to say it, but
you definitely can't call it a 60-40.
Yeah.
I think even 70.
This
30 is probably
match,
generous.
Brisbane Carlton at the Gabba is going to be very, very dependent on who Carlton get back. It's pretty much that simple. We won't know.
Do they get
what this is going to look like?
Do they get the carcass delivered to the Lions Den, or will they actually get somewhat of a,
will they get some spears to fight the Lions off?
because they definitely did show a lot of guts in those games against West Coast and St Kilda, but they've definitely also showed limitations, which is like what you get when you have nearly 22 players out.
Absolutely. I mean, and to be fair, those 2 games were all down to Patrick Cripps and the monster performances that he gave. So
yeah,
I don't know if he's granted he's definitely one of those players who can definitely step up and go another level in finals, but I don't know if this is the game that you want him to put that entirely on his shoulders. You want to hope that he has some support this week.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like with some of the players coming back, so Charlotte Conroy, definitely, it would be huge coming back, but is he coming back because it's fit? Or is he going to be a bit limited because, foot injuries don't tend to go away.
The injury list takes the whole page.
Yeah, I know. So, as I said, he was a bit hobbled before. So, hopefully, a lot of these players you think will come back, but it's how fast they can cope with their first opponent being Brisbane. And, he said you expect that giving him a lot of the jump. Wiedering, probably one of the most important players. With the way Lions are playing.
Apart from Cripps, he's probably the most important player to them right now.
Yeah, no doubt who he goes on. Big Joe Danaher. You have to limit that because it's still played very much Joe Danaher centric. And then, as I said, they've drifted away from Hipwood. He's played defence some time this year. Still in forward, but not in quite as good as form. So they can limit down Cripps and limit Danaher and try and prevent some of the smalls going in that game. Carlton have some pretty good ground ball defenders.
If Carlton bring in a tagger, who would you want them to tag? Would it be Lockie Neal? Would it be Dunkley? Would it be Rayner?
I think it is just Neal. It's still a lot of the engine for Carlton. But it's really, it's what you want to do from that tagger, because we've seen a lot of the time the Chincotta tag, and I think he would play again with his form, but he's also offered a bit in the forward line, so it depends who they get back. If they don't get enough forward back, I wouldn't put him on, maybe you would put him on Zorko.
Well, the players that are available, not entirely including the ones that did play last week, so like Sard, because he came in, is Kerno should be back. Tom de Koning might be back.
Maybe.
Corey Durden, Sam Durden, Orazio Fantasia. I can't remember if he played last week or week before, sorry.
He did. He was pretty mediocre.
Caleb Marchbank, Jack Martin, Mitch McGovern, Hudson O'Keefe, who I think is a French player anyway, and Sard, who obviously played. Oh, and Mackay as well.
And I have heard whispers that, it won't be this week, but Sam Doherty is apparently...
Yes, I did see that as well, that he's possible.
Yeah, at least having the intent to where he could be drawn upon, so that'll be interesting. But again, you wouldn't expect it, and especially considering they could just miss. Sorry, not miss, but just be gone.
There is a fair chance that Brisbane could just tear them apart, but that remains to be seen currently.
But, if we are going optimistically, as a Brisbane, Harris Andrews great, but they're definitely not a one-on-one lockdown defensive team. They require Harris Andrews playing out of his skin week in, week out, basically.
I just scrolled up to Brisbane's injury list, and they have 6 players that are out for the entire season. Yeah,
no, they've, as I said, both teams.
And then obviously they got Berry back, and I believe he played last week, or week before, sorry. And then Jack Payne and Bruce Revel, one's a French player. Payne's also kind of a French player. They're the only other players available. I don't think they had anyone injured in their last game.
Not really. Payne would be interesting because, it's like one of those things where you ever want Carlton's team to come out first, like if Mackay and Cornrow come out, you probably would pay Jackson Payne. But again, depends what they want to do. But yeah, again, until the list comes out, you're still going to favour it towards Carlton.
Yeah, absolutely. Again,
Brisbane.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I also said the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because it's up there. Like, if it was down here, it could be much more closer, regardless of what Carlton kind of
Yeah,
play.
maybe.
But I think
Yeah.
because it's up there, it's Brisbane are going to be virtually unstoppable unless Carlton just pull out the big guns.
Yeah, exactly.
So overall, for our predictions for this week, Port Adelaide predominantly leaning. I'm leaning Hawthorn. I think are you leaning Doggies?
No, I'm leaning Hawthorn.
Okay, so both of us Hawthorn, both of us Port Adelaide, 50-50 for Battle of the Bridge. And then
Yeah, I'm leaning towards G-Dubs and you're leaning towards Sydney, I think.
Yep. And then both of us going for Brisbane in this first week. All right. I believe that is everything in the rundown that we wanted to talk about. Let me just double check. Nope, that is actually everything. Excellent. So, that will do us for this week. Thank you also so much for listening to us ramble about a bunch of things, a bunch of different topics. I wasn't expecting this to go for as long as it did, considering we didn't really have all that much to talk about. But, I thought this was very insightful into where we were thinking pre-season to where we're thinking now.
Yeah, exactly.
And just
always nice to compare.
And our obviously thoughts on the Australian, and what finals is going to have in store for us.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, that will do us for this week. Be sure to go check out my socials. I'm streaming tomorrow night as of recording, but also tonight as of publishing, and or Thursday night as well, day after, as also a day on the weekend as well. I'm trying to be a little more consistent. I have been so far, so I'm very happy with myself for that. I hope you all come and hang out with me if you've got time. Go check out podcast socials. Trying to be a bit more active when the finals hit, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, that will do us. So thank you all so much, and we will see you all next week for episode 29 and the rundown
First
of
week of finals. Yeah.
first week of finals. So until then, much love, and we will see you then. Catch ya.